Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn. Alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we are answering a bunch of questions from you, the people. We've got an NFL and specifically Super Bowl mailbag episode today. So this is not our full Super Bowl preview. That is going to be next week. In this episode, we're answering your guys' questions, which tend to be more narrative, historical kind of stuff, which is pretty interesting and fun. And we are answering questions on all things NFL. So before we actually get in to the Super Bowl questions, Logan, I think we start with the biggest piece of news, at least from my biased perspective as, of course, a Bills fan, that has just dropped within the last 48 hours, which is that Joe Brady has been selected as the next head coach for the Buffalo Bills, promoted from offensive coordinator after the firing of Sean McDermott. Alil asks, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is the Joe Brady hire?
Like 8. I mean, it's just so deeply uninspiring. I don't know if there's anything like that bad, but it's like Sean McDermott is just better in the role that they fired him from and promoted Joe Brady to. It's really as simple as that to me. Like, you can say what you want about McDermott and him not calling plays or whatnot on offense, you know, him not being able to elevate talent there. He's a good motivator. He's a good defensive schemer when guys are injured and has been able to at least squeeze a lot of juice out of those defenses in the regular season despite his playoff shortcomings. Again, I'll circle back to what our rationale was when the Steelers and Bills were contemplating firing their head coaches, and it was, this is the right decision. It is time to move on from this party for an upgrade, for an improvement. And in both of those instances, I think the teams downgraded. Now, it's different, right? Like Mike McCarthy is going to call plays for the Steelers. Joe Brady is going to call plays for the Bills. If they're great at both of those duties on offense, they're good hires. But, like, I just don't look at either of those guys as really game changers, man. It's really as simple as that. Like, I think both of these teams downgraded, to put it simply.
Yeah, and we know who Joe Brady is as a play caller. He's been the play caller for this team for the last 2.5 years, and he's fine, but you had a clear opportunity here to actually upgrade, to actually get somebody who is a more innovative, additive playmaker, and you passed up on that opportunity just to promote a guy in-house, which doesn't make sense and doesn't move the needle whatsoever. Because like you said here, the opportunity was to make a meaningful change. You looked at your situation and you said, we need to shake things up. We need an actual elevator. Sean McDermott is a fine head coach. He is a good leader of men. He has his strengths as a defensive mind, but ultimately he has fallen short for us in big spots too many times as a defensive guy. The fact that the Bills have allowed 33.2 points per game in their playoff losses since 2020, that's inexcusable. We need somebody who is going to be a game changer. We need somebody who is a high-level coach who we feel confident is going to do justice to Josh Allen in his prime years, which Sean McDermott was unable to do. And they just didn't get that guy. They didn't bring any new ideas into the building with their head coach. That to me is extremely frustrating. I think that Brady is fine as a play caller. At times I have some frustrations with him being a little too conservative, leaning heavily on the run game, leaning heavily on the screen game, and ultimately it's very interrelated with personnel that they just haven't had the sort of downfield weapons, the sort of receiver talent to unleash Josh Allen to his utmost potential as a passer with the configuration of this roster. Like, I put a lot of that on Brandon Beane and his deprioritization of receiver. Brandon Beane, another guy who has been promoted in this offseason. But as frustrating as the result to me here, and the fact that I'm so deeply underwhelmed by the Joe Brady hire, and if I were to rank it on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it like a 2. I very specifically said I did not want this to happen when the Bills fired McDermott. Just as bad as the result is the process to me. Maybe the process is even worse because the Bills talked to Anthony Lynn for this position, Logan. There are 31 other NFL teams, not a single one of them would consider Anthony Lynn to be their next head coach in 2025. They talked to Phillip Rivers, for whom all those same things apply. This guy has not coached in the NFL. He was just playing quarterback a few weeks ago. They talked to Brian Daboll, where again, you feel like the only thing they have there is familiarity. Daboll in his time in New York did nothing to justify now being the guy who was entrusted with the remaining prime years for Josh Allen with this team that has had a ton of success, but they need somebody who is going to push them over the hump. They talked to Anthony Weaver, the Dolphins defense coordinator, just like all these deeply uninspiring candidates. And you know who they didn't talk to, Logan? Brian Flores, who I thought was the best defensive mind available if they wanted to go that route and say, okay, let's pair our all-time great quarterback and trust his ability to elevate us to consistently be an elite offense, which they have been for the last 6 years under Josh, regardless of who's calling plays. And let's look at that true defensive elevator and bring in that guy. Didn't talk to Flores. Minter got swooped up. He's the other guy who would have been in that mold. They did not wait, most baffling to me, to talk to Clint Kubiak, who was maybe my favorite guy for this position. It was him and Flores. I thought they were the best candidates in terms of their respective sides of the ball. They couldn't interview Kubiak right now because he's coaching in the Super Bowl, but what are you rushing for? Like, what are you up against here? First of all, most of the head coaching vacancies have already been filled. Second of all, you are by a country mile the best available job. Anybody is going to wait for you. Joe Brady is not going to get swooped up in the next 2 weeks before you can talk to Clint Kubiak. That to me is infuriating, that the best candidates available, they didn't even consider, they didn't even talk with, because I do think that Kubiak would have been a legitimately additive playmaker, a guy whose scheme actually fits the Bills personnel and who is simply better as a play caller, who's a brilliant play action guy, who is a great play caller when it comes to passing out of heavy looks, all this stuff that the Bills offense in terms of personnel would have excelled with so much. And now it's like we're running it back, but probably worse, because now we have to figure out who's the defensive coordinator here. Somebody tweeted out, the Bills should absolutely go out and try to get Sean McDermott as their DC. He'd be a great fit for the current personnel they have, which like is hilarious and yet totally true, because they could have kept the pairing of McDermott and Brady. I don't think Joe Brady was a super hot head coaching candidate. And I also think the jobs that are out there at this point suck, right? The Browns just went out there and hired Monken. That's deeply uninspiring. The Cardinals job, the Raiders job, these are terrible jobs. I think you're better off being Josh Allen's offensive coordinator. And then they could have at least kept that formula of, okay, McDermott is a defensive guy, Brady for the offensive guy for one more year, if they weren't going to make actual major changes. I liked them firing McDermott because I hoped it was actually going to lead to this team improving, to this team progressing. And instead, they have gone and they have done nothing meaningful. Brandon Beane, who again has failed this roster, who has failed to address the two biggest needs they've had staring them right in the face, edge rusher most significantly, and receiver, who has allowed the defensive talent on this roster to just degrade. They just haven't had the dudes on that side of the ball. He gets promoted. And now, I don't even understand what the whole idea is here with Brady. Is it like he's going to be better at game management? I've seen some people point to the fact that apparently Brady didn't want to push for points at the end of the first half when they had 16 seconds, no timeouts, and that ends up costing them points the other way because Josh fumbles and it leads to a Denver field goal at the end of the half, which is the difference in this game. That to me is just not like a moving point because, yeah, I think that was a bad decision by McDermott, but also Josh, just like don't fumble in that moment. That was a terrible play that he made. And honestly, I thought McDermott improved with some of the game management stuff this year. So is the idea that Brady is a better voice in the locker room? I don't really buy that. Again, I think that if anything, that was McDermott's strength. Yes, he had his weird moments. I mean, after 2021, he did a bunch of inexcusable stuff, right? Saying the offense left too much time on the clock when there was 13 seconds. He bungled that defensive sequence. That was probably his worst moment as a head coach, and I don't think he handled it well as a leader either. But this just feels like the fakest change of all time to me. It feels like ownership got mad, ownership felt impulsive, and firing McDermott is not an impulsive decision if you do it for the right reasons, which were there. But it feels to me more so like Terry Pegula just had a freaking conniption. He freaked out. It was one too many losses, so he cut off the head of the snake, but then he didn't understand any of the changes that needed to be made in tandem with that. No change at GM, no pursuit of an actually elite head coach. It just does not inspire confidence in the Bills' ability to make the most of the Josh Allen era. I think Terry Pegula is a bad owner, flat out. I think he's had an embarrassing week. Again, if it's making a ridiculous comment about, oh, why did you make the decision to fire McDermott? What led to that? A bad call, right? Well, not only is that just like a terrible mentality to have, that's a terrible rationale to present for making such a big decision. And the whole Keon Coleman situation, trying to put that all on McDermott when Brandon Beane is responsible for personnel decisions. And there's footage of Brandon Beane saying that he wanted Keon Coleman on this football team. I am just so concerned about the decision-making process and the decision-making capabilities of the guy who runs this football team right now. And that's a difficult thing to overcome because how long is the leash going to be for Joe Brady now, right? Like, this is a legitimate commitment that you made. How long is the leash for Brandon Beane? I'm just concerned Terry Pegula has no idea what actually needs to change for this team to get over the hump. And they're always going to be in it because of Josh Allen. The offense is always going to be elite because of Josh Allen. They're going to win 11, 12 games every year because of Josh Allen. But these are not the moves that push them forward on the margins. They are the exact sort of moves that you feel could easily be the reason you fall just short again. And that's why I am extremely disappointed by this hire.
Yeah, and I think it exposes just unfortunate organizational incompetence and dysfunction. That's the death knell in football. I'm just becoming, I've said this over and over again repeatedly during the football season, but like I'm becoming more coaching and front office pilled where like I think it's more of a, are you competent from the top down? And the Steelers and I think the Bills alike have shown us that they are out of touch with the fan bases and are making just dumb decisions. Like I said about the McCarthy hire, man, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope you're wrong, man. I hope Joe Brady's the shit. I hope he comes in here. He's the greatest play caller all time. He fires up the boys in the locker room.
Well, we know who he is as a play caller. That's the thing. And it was so funny. I think it was PFF tweet out, like, the Bills' offense under Joe Brady, #1 in points per drive, #1 in EPA per play. And it's like, okay, man.
That is kind of the crux of it that makes this so stupid is it's like nobody else is interested in Joe Brady as a head coach. Like, well, you know what I mean? Like, let's do like a Ravens like with McDonald thing. Say that it was like Mike McDonald who had come up for hire, and you don't want to lose him, so you fire Harbaugh and promote him to head coach. Like, that makes sense. Who the fuck was interested in Joe Brady being their lead guy?
Yeah, he's gotten interviews, but again, all of the best jobs in this offseason came and went. And the point that I was getting at is people citing, oh, the Bills' offense has been #1 in all these different categories under Joe Brady. Guess what? You go back to 2020 and the Bills' offense is #1 over that period in all of those same categories, right? They're the #1 scoring offense. They're the #1 third down offense. They're the #2 red zone offense. They're going to be #1 in total points per drive, total offensive success rate. You know why? Because of Josh Allen. It wasn't because of Brian Dable. It certainly wasn't because of Ken Dorsey. It's not because of Joe Brady. And to, again, reject the opportunity to bring in new ideas, to bring somebody who could have legitimately added value for this team is discouraging to me. Maybe they really did just need to get rid of McDermott. Maybe there was just this lingering sense of this is not the guy who is going to get it done for us. But I think that sense has been there like long before this year, honestly, and they didn't make a move then, and they make a move now after McDermott's best season, and the only thing they do is promote the offensive coordinator. Like, I can run in circles, I can go on and on about this. It's just really frustrating to me. And the Steelers comparison, man, what's so dumb about both teams is it feels like they kind of just went with the guy they know. Like, the Bills' entire process indicates that to me. Former Bill in terms of the coaching staff. Oh, Josh Allen knows this guy personally. He likes this guy with Phillip Rivers and Davis Webb. That's just not a good reason to go out there and make a major decision. You should be looking for the best candidate. The Steelers go out there and hire Mike McCarthy. Why? Because he's old and experienced and he's from Pittsburgh. Like, that stuff doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter if Mike McCarthy has fond memories of his childhood in Pittsburgh.
I was a firefighter and a cop in Pittsburgh.
Dude,
he used to work at the bar down the street.
Like,
real hard-working guy. He's from Pittsburgh.
Is he good at his job is what matters.
Who fucking cares, bruh?
It's just ridiculous. This sort of, I guess, regional sports mentality.
Like
this is our city. You got to be one of us. It totally is.
Versus the devil you don't, and it is a decision that is scared. It's a safe decision, but it's also a scared decision. Like, it's...
Yeah.
I'm fucking disappointed.
And the Bills fan base overwhelmingly is opposed to this move because, of course, they are. What's to be excited about here? What's to be optimistic about here? And what does this say about Terry Pegula's ability to make future important decisions down the line? None of it is good.
Agreed. And a lot of people have fond opinions of Sean McDermott. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like this is the offseason where McDermott's feet were held to the fire the least coming out of the playoffs. Like,
right, in terms of his actual responsibility for them losing.
Yeah,
I
after
totally
the 13 seconds game, if you would guillotine McDermott, it makes sense then. It doesn't really make as much sense now, man. It's bad process on the part of both franchises, in my opinion.
Yeah, and as I said when they fired McDermott, I don't want to get up in the timing of, okay, he wasn't responsible this year because he's been responsible enough times in the past that I think there's just enough failures in his body of work to justify firing him. But you had to actually make an improvement. That's the whole point of doing something like this.
I mean within the context of what the Steelers and Bills did after the fact of firing these guys, like in totality. I'm not saying, again, I agree with you. I think individually it was time and justified for both of these guys, but the only reason and the only way that you get better is if you capitalize off firing them.
So now that defensive coordinator hire becomes absolutely massive. Jim Schwartz is the guy I'm looking at for that position. He is not returning to the Browns. I think he's brilliant. He also
doesn't
is
matter.
a former
Brandon
Bill,
Bean,
so they'll probably
pick
love
your
that.
fucking phone up and do something, you bum.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And on that note, we will move on to some Super Bowl questions. But I do agree. I think Brandon Bean is ultimately the person who is most responsible, who should be most under the microscope right now, more than Joe Brady, more than anybody else. But let's get to these Super Bowl questions, Logan. Brett opens up with a banger. If Sam Darnold wins Super Bowl MVP, does he have the greatest career turnaround in sports history?
I can't speak to like other sports, but I will speak to football. I think that Darnold's not really close. I think if we're talking about greatest career turnarounds, I think there are more endearing like life stories that are involved more so than like a guy getting banished in terms of a football career. Like Warner's out of football from 94 to 99. 94 to 95, he's working at the grocery store. 96, 97, he's in the AFL. 99, it just breaks his way that Trent Green goes down. He becomes a starting quarterback, and in that first season wins the Super Bowl. Like, that's kind of unprecedented. I think that takes the cake. Johnny Unitas is very similar as well. Drafted in the 9th round by the Steelers. The Steelers cut him to take care of his family. Johnny U was working construction until the Baltimore Colts called him back up. That's another good one where I think he's, just counted out a little more. This is a different era of the game, too, so I think that's important to mention. But Night Train Lane's another good one. He's in the Army and then is working at an aircraft plant after he gets out, I think, of World War II. Night Train Lane comes back and just asks the Los Angeles Rams for a tryout and then becomes one of the greatest corners of an era. And then I'd say, Tom Brady in totality. Brady was like the 7th quarterback at Michigan when he signed on. He gets beat out in his senior season by Chad Hutchinson for the starting job. He's the 4th quarterback on the depth chart when he gets to New England. Same thing like Warner. Bledsoe goes down, wins a Super Bowl in his first year. I'd say the story actually most similar to Sam's is like Steve Young, where if you look at a highly drafted quarterback, he gets counted out, he bounces back, he takes over, and very early on into his tenure of being the starting quarterback, they win a Super Bowl. So, I think there's similar comparisons, and it is a big-time turnaround, but what I do think makes it just a little bit, I would say, less impressive to those other guys is, you always saw the raw ability with Darnold, right? And somebody had a theory on Twitter that actually really made my gears start turning about this. Somebody called it I wish I had the guy's handle. He said that his friend coined the term the Alex Smith event horizon. And the theory is that if a quarterback is so talented enough, he is going to play enough games in the NFL where he will eventually figure it out. And I just kind of sat last night thinking about that, and I was like, wow, that's a really good point and a really good way to put it. There's an experience threshold where I think Darnold has crossed that experience threshold where he's always had the arm ability maybe you could say the same thing about Daniel Jones. Like, he reaches this requisite talent level, but he's played enough now where he's seen enough coverages, enough fronts. And maybe they're not the best quarterbacks in football necessarily the way you would have expected, respective of their draft position and what their pre-draft thoughts about them were, but they did at least develop enough to where they were a starting and good starting quarterback. So Darnold's story is amazing. It's one of the biggest modern comeback stories, I think. And I think it is really similar to Steve Young if we were going to pick one guy out. But I don't think it's like the greatest turnaround. I do think there are some football stories that beat him out. But I think it's the best one this year.
Dude, shout out to whichever scholar came up with the Alex Smith event horizon.
Dude, I know. I was
theory.
like, why have I've never thought of it like that way, but it makes complete sense.
All I'm taking away from that, they just need to give Anthony Richardson more chances. Just let him start. He'll suck for a couple more years, but once that guy has the experience and once the processing catches up and he knows what he's seeing, he will be a monster. It's proven by the theory. I agree with you. I don't think that this is the greatest career turnaround we've ever seen. However, I would make a distinction between some of the candidates that you were shouting out in Darnold, because to me, there's a big difference between an underdog story and a turnaround. Tom Brady, underdog story. But in his NFL career, there wasn't really much to turn around, right? Like, yeah, he was the backup as a rookie, but from the moment he came in, he was pretty good. He won a Super Bowl in his first year as a starter and then obviously got a lot better from there. But that to me isn't a turnaround. That's an underdog story. Kurt Warner is both, I would say. So much of his turnaround involves his pre-NFL career, even because it's like just overcoming the fact that he was out of the league for so long. And then once he gets in there, the guy wins MVP, he wins a Super Bowl. And by the way, after that 3-year run of dominance he has from 99 to 01, he's got another career turnaround. He's got another comeback story.
He got benched for Eli Manning, and then he got benched for Matt Leinart in Arizona.
Exactly. And even before that, I mean, his last 2 years in St. Louis, he went
got
0-7.
For Mark Bulger because Mike Martz said, I'm done with you.
Right. I mean, badly underperforming, teams losing, injury stuff, like everything was going wrong for the guy. And then he comes back and he has 3 more great years in Arizona, including a run to the Super Bowl. So Kurt Warner, his whole story is just pretty incredible. I would take that over Darnold. And then if we are looking at a more similar comparison, I don't think anything can ever top Steve Young, because Steve Young went from this guy who was coming out of the USFL.
I was just going to say, I think Drew Brees might have an argument too now that I'm thinking about it too.
But
just
he
the
was
way
good.
He was kind of, but no, I mean, I will never forget that offseason and what people were saying about Brees. Like, Brees had completely torn his labrum going for a fumble with the Chargers. Like, that was supposed to be a career-ending kind of shoulder injury. Infamously, Nick Saban and the Dolphins and their training staff don't even have him pass a physical. They signed Dante Culpepper instead, and Brees is the, savior of New Orleans. I think that, and obviously, again, that's different from Darnold's story because Darnold just wasn't that good in New York. But
yeah.
And Brees was a Pro Bowl quarterback with the Chargers beforehand. But that's another one. And I'd say, while I'm thinking about it, Peyton Manning, obviously, again, that's a little different, but his first year, I mean, damn, man, I can't imagine if.
Oh, I thought you were going to say from the neck injury in 2011.
Oh, that's a good shout. That's a really good shout, actually. I was saying more so his rookie season, that I couldn't imagine if, sports talk was as prevalent as it was then and as widespread. Damn, dude, people would have probably had some ice cold takes about Peyton after that year, but that's a really good shout, too.
Yeah, I also think, though, a rookie quarterback struggling, no matter how talented, that stuff has happened so many times throughout history. And I agree with you, right? Brees is a great turnaround because not only does he overcome the injury after the Chargers moved on from him for the younger, sexier Phillip Rivers, he also just got way better and he did it all. He won a Super Bowl. I mean, he didn't win an MVP, but easily could have. Becomes clearly one of the 10 greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. But I'm going to come back to Steve Young, because I just think it's a perfect version of not a quarterback who is nearly as highly touted as Darnold to begin with, actually. I think it is worth establishing that. He was in the USFL, and then his first 2 years as a starter with the Bucs, after he was the first pick in the supplementary draft, he goes 3-16. He throws 11 touchdowns and 21 picks. They're done. They give up on him. They trade him. He backs up Joe Montana for 4 full seasons in San Francisco. And then in his 30s, after up until that point, his entire resume was really bad starter, backup, USFL guy. In his 30s, won 2 MVPs, a Super Bowl in which he threw for 6 touchdowns and was Super Bowl MVP, of course. 6 times led the league in passer rating, 4 times led the league in passing touchdowns, and reached what was arguably a top 5 peak in quarterback history. I'm going to take that story. Like, what Darnold has done is really impressive, bouncing back from seeing ghosts and all his struggles in New York, and he's had all these different phases of his odyssey at this point. In Carolina, improving there, and then his time in San Francisco, and then part 1 of the real bounce back in Minnesota. Like, it's a great story. I don't know how you beat going from totally counted out, backup for years and years, to becoming quite literally one of the greatest to ever do it, and that's what Steve Young did.
Yeah, 2 other guys real quick before we move on that I was thinking about. I've mentioned this guy before, but Plunkett was the number 1 overall pick out of Stanford to the New England Patriots. He was counted out, discarded, became a backup, and then was a 2-time Super Bowl champ with the Raiders. Another guy, too, and he maybe has one of the most unique quarterback comeback stories ever, and that's Rich Gannon. I mean, Gannon was a 3-year starter for the Minnesota Vikings in the 1990s, and then was basically a backup in a spot starter in Kansas City. He doesn't get another full-time starting opportunity again until 1999. Again, this is from 1990 when he was with the Vikings, with the Raiders in 99. And then a few years later, he wins the MVP, and he's competing in the Super Bowl, and he's Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, that's another one of the biggest ones. I'm trying to rack
a great
my brain
shout.
if there's anybody that we're forgetting.
I would also say Alex Smith, speaking of the Alex Smith event horizon, is like a worthwhile shout. He was, as a rookie, 1 touchdown to 11 picks, and he had injury stuff and had just like basically been resigned to this status as like one of the worst starters in the league, right? The Niners kind of kept giving him a shot as the starter, so he wasn't benched or sent to another team like some of these other guys, but like Alex Smith sucked. And like you said, he was like the uber talented, huge arm guy who just couldn't channel it into actual production. And then he becomes the exact opposite of that. If he is like the uber efficient game manager, if anything, too conservative, but is never going to turn the ball over. If you've got a really good defense, he can stabilize your offense, and had a ton of success. Like, I think Darnold this year is probably better than Alex Smith ever was, but Alex Smith was legitimately pretty good for a while there, and obviously, well, he also has a second comeback element where he gets benched for cap, and then he goes to Kansas City in his first year there. He wins 11 games and continually led them to the playoffs. And then, even after like the most brutal leg injury you've ever seen in your life, a life-threatening injury, he comes back and he goes 5-1 with the Commanders. I know that was only 6 games, but like Alex Smith was kind of a continual comeback story. So there are some incredible stories in sports. Like you said, we didn't even get past the NFL because I don't think we need to conclude that Darnold is not literally the best career turnaround ever, but it is an incredible story, and one that is very much worth celebrating and could have a kind of storybook ending to this year. Speaking of storybook endings, Logan, Dovey asks, if the Patriots win, where do they rank in the all-time craziest Super Bowl winners?
I'm viewing this from a perspective of if you had told me coming into the preseason that this team was going to win. Obviously, I think the first team that I think of is the 1999 Rams. I mean,
yeah.
Like, I knew that the Patriots had a chance to make the playoffs or be one of these teams that sneak in. That, to me, is insane that they're here on the cusp. And then I'd say, I guess I don't know, like the 2007 Giants maybe, or like the 2011 Giants maybe, but
yeah.
Because if you think about what that team was like beforehand, Tiki Barber, despite his fumbling issues, I think is probably one of the most underrated do-it-all running backs of all time. Like, what he was doing at his apex, Tiki was such a monster. And the only issue that he had was ever just holding on to the football. He was such a major component to that Giants offense with a young Eli Manning. Like, I think if you had told people, hey, your 2,000 scrimmage yards a season running back basically is going to dip. And then I can't remember if it was a year or two later after he retired.
No,
they
it was
won,
the very next year, right? He retired after 06.
Yeah, if you had told them, hey, he's going to bounce, and then you guys are going to win the Super Bowl next season, I'm gonna look back and I'm gonna see if there's anybody else pre-2000 that I can think of. But it's the '99 Rams and then it's the '07 Giants. I think are the first two at the top of my mind. Actually, and the I was gonna say the '05 Steelers, but like even them, they went 15-1 the year previous.
Yeah, no, get them out of here, Logan. Get them out of here.
The Pats maybe.
Totally. No, I agree. I actually think the 2001 Pats are a crazier Super Bowl winner than the 2025 Pats if they get it done, which I think with hindsight maybe sounds crazy to a lot of people because, they ended up winning 6 of them in the Tom Brady era. But that team won 5 games the year before. That team went to a backup second-year, 6th-round quarterback, and that team was facing what is widely considered the greatest offense in NFL history, a team that had already won a Super Bowl. They were 14-point underdogs to the greatest show on turf Rams in that Super Bowl. Like, I would still take them. I would take the 99 Rams too, probably just because it was so out of nowhere. Like, by the time that you got to the Super Bowl, obviously, the Patriots are still kind of a significant underdog, whereas the Rams had established themselves as an all-time great offense by that point, and Kurt Warner was an MVP. Nobody would have seen it coming beforehand, but they established their greatness during that season. But if you look at preseason odds, that team, the 99 Rams, did have the longest Super Bowl odds ever of an eventual champion. They were 150-1, Logan. Unbelievable. But what's really cool about this year is this is the first matchup in which both teams had preseason odds of more than 50-1 to win the Super Bowl. Because obviously the Patriots are the team that we look at and we go, oh my God, they won 4 games last year. They hire a new head coach. Drake Maye takes the leap. Everything changes. They spend a ton in free agency. What a turnaround. But they were 80-1, crazy long odds. The Seahawks were 60-1. And even though pretty early on in this season, I became higher on the Seahawks than the Patriots, and I think the Seahawks just had the more impressive season overall and established themselves as kind of a more convincingly dominant team throughout the year. I was lower on the Seahawks coming into the year than the Patriots. I had the Patriots winning more games. I had the Patriots in the playoffs. I did not with the Seahawks. I thought they were going to miss Geno Smith. I got to say that. I love my boy Geno. So the Seahawks, again, they've been at this level for so long this year that we can kind of take it for granted now, but this was not expected either. And then Patriots, 80-1 preseason odds to win the Super Bowl. If you look at the biggest underdogs going into the Super Bowl in that game specifically, the Patriots are the biggest underdog we've seen since the 2017 Eagles. Both teams 4.5-point dogs going into the Super Bowl. So, they've got that combination of crazy doubted coming into the year and then still doubted even going into the big game. So if they get it done, it would be one of the greats. But I would still take 0-1 Patriots. I also don't think anybody's ever topping the 68 Jets and the 07 Giants. 68 Jets, man, 18-point underdogs. Like, the AFL was viewed as not a legitimate threat.
A lot of that has to do with the framing of the leagues, and I don't think there was actually an 18-point discrepancy between both. I think a lot of it had to do with the perception of the league itself, but they were another one. And then the only other team pre-2000, the Jets are a great shout. I was going to bring them up from Super Bowl III. We bring these up periodically. The thing about that is, the Jets had to win that game for the NFL and AFL to merge. That is such a pivotal, watershed kind of moment in the NFL and the AFL's history. The other team I would shout out would be the 1981 49ers. The season before they win, they go 6-10 under Bill Walsh. They're the number 12 scoring offense, the number 26 scoring defense. They jump to the number 2 scoring defense, number 7 scoring offense, and they go 13-3. That's a super impressive
Great
turnaround as well. That's the first, that's the kickoff point for the Niners dynasty.
It's a great shout, and I do come back to the 07 Giants. I just think that team, 10-win season, and then you go up against what was perceived as the greatest team in NFL history, and you beat them. They were more than 2 touchdown underdogs in that game, too. That is maybe the greatest upset in the history of American sports. I don't know. I think in terms of a championship game at the professional level, I'll certainly go NFL. That's the biggest upset in Super Bowl history that we've seen. So I got to shout at them. And then I still think the 2011 Giants, like even though, okay, they had done it once before, that team won 9 games. They had a negative point differential. The path they had to go through, beating the 15-win Packers, beating a dominant 49er team, and then beating the Patriots again. I think that they're probably in like that second tier, the 2011 Giants, just because I guess it wasn't as shocking when they won their second, but it was still shocking. And then I do think the 2017 Eagles, even though they were the 1 seed, I mean, they did it with a backup quarterback, and they did it with a backup quarterback against the Patriots, and they did it in a shootout in which that backup quarterback was absolutely sensational. So if the 2025 Patriots win, I think they fall somewhere into that range with the 2017 Eagles, the 2011 Giants. I do not think they are the craziest ever, but they are one of the craziest ever. That's for sure. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. It is not easy to keep track of all your finances on your own, at least not for me. You got so many different recurring subscriptions and bills and expenses. It's easy for stuff to get lost in there. That's where Rocket Money comes in. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings.
With Rocket Money, you can combine your checking, savings, loans, and investments all in one place to get the clearest view of your financial picture. Rocket Money can also track subscriptions and has the ability to cancel unwanted subscriptions within the app with a few taps, saving you time and avoiding unnecessary and unwanted charges.
Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/nerdsesh. That's rocketmoney.com/nerdsesh. rocketmoney.com/nerdsesh. Zach asks Logan, more impressive defense, Pats or Seahawks?
I don't know how we're supposed to gauge like impressive versus better. I think the Seahawks defense is more impressive to me because they're the best defense in football. The Patriots' individual turnaround, I think, is probably more impressive. And the Seahawks have just drafted and built this team up over the past 3 to 4 years with just impeccable moves. The acquisition to get Leonard Williams, them absolutely crushing. I don't know if I've ever seen a run of secondary players quite like Seattle has ripped off these past couple of years, like getting Reek, getting Devin Witherspoon. Devin Witherspoon, just one of my favorite, I think, NFL players ever. That guy plays cornerback like a wild man. He's such a good tackler. I would say the Patriots is more impressive that they were able to build this defense so completely and overhaul it in one offseason, like bringing in Milton Williams, and that completely changes the defense. Drafting Christian Gonzalez, bringing in Robert Spillane, Vrabel bringing in a bunch of guys that are important. But I don't know. I think the Seahawks defense is just more impressive to me just because they're one of the most dominant defenses I think I've ever seen and one of the most complete units ever at all 3 levels, the D-line, the linebackers, and the secondary. So I don't know how to make that distinction, but I'll roll with the Seahawks just because I think they're the best in the league.
I'll put it like this. In the regular season, it was definitely Seattle because they put up these absolutely dominant defensive results as they were facing a lot of really good offenses too. In the playoffs, it has to be the Patriots, like this historic company that they're in that we've talked about, where the only teams in NFL history to allow fewer points through their first 3 playoff games are the 85 Bears, the 2000 Ravens, and the 86 Giants.
Yeah. I don't know. They did play Jarrett Stidham. I don't know how much to weigh that into the equation.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree. I think you have to look at the context of the offenses that they've faced, where they have gone up against 2 terrible offensive lines in the first 2 rounds, and then C.J. Stroud, who just played a horrible game in his own right, and then they went up against Jarrett Stidham, and the conditions were favoring the defense in the Houston game and favoring the defense in the last quarter and a half of the Denver game, like absolutely all of that. They have definitely had the slate to put up a dominant defensive performance, but the extent to which they have dominated is nuts, allowing 8.7 points per game, 3.3 yards per play, 8 takeaways, a touchdown score defensively, 12 sacks. Like those numbers are completely insane. And I didn't expect them to be this great defensively. In fact, their postseason, even considering the context, has been so dominant, Logan, that they have gone from 9th in defensive EPA per play, which is where they ranked in the regular season, to 3rd in defensive EPA per play if you look at the regular season and playoffs combined. They've taken that big a leap off of just 3 playoff games.
Milton Williams missed a lot of time down the stretch, too. I mean, he's a transcendent kind of defensive tackle.
Dude, the difference in terms of their run defense when he is on the field versus off it, it's literally a difference of like 60-something yards per game allowed. So absolutely monstrous. That being said, impressive is kind of a term where we can get into semantics. Which defense do I think is better? Absolutely Seattle. I think they are clearly better against the run. They've been the best run defense in football this year by a lot, even as they have played a shit ton out of nickel and out of dime. Like, they are just so incredibly impressive there with their ability to stop the run better than anybody else with really pass defense personnel where they are also exceptional, and the secondary is ridiculous. It's better. The pass rush is significantly better. Like, absolutely, you have to go with Seattle as the better defense. There's a reason they've been in the conversation for the best defense all year long, and New England has just had like this really impressive 3-game stretch of defense against bad offenses. And all year, New England has preyed on a lot of shitty offenses. And that's part of the reason I was skeptical of how good is this defense really, right? 61% of the snaps they faced in the regular season were against quarterbacks who were either backups or ranked 30th or lower in EPA per play. Like, it was a lot of horrible quarterback play and horrible offenses they faced. They barely played any good offenses at all. And they still really haven't faced a good offense in the playoffs, but they have been killing them. Overall, though, Seattle being so dominant against a much, much tougher schedule in terms of the offenses they faced. And I just like their personnel more everywhere. I like New England's coaching a lot. I think Zach Kerr's been really impressive. I like Mike McDonald even more. It's definitely Seattle. But, I mean, who have I been more moved by these playoffs? Absolutely New England, because I knew that we would have the high expectations for Seattle, and New England's defense has kind of blown me out of the water. Muad'Dib asks, would an elite Drake Maye performance in the Super Bowl, regardless of win or loss, outweigh the first 3 bad playoff games of his career?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I try to remember every game, but like I think in the consensus, I mean, like I think in the consensus eyes of like when we look back and immediately what we think about, yeah, it would. I think about historical context. The Super Bowl just means more. When I think of Jalen Hurts' playoff runs, both of them when he went to the Super Bowl, you know what 2 games I think of? Him in the Super Bowl. And guess what? He kicked ass in the Super Bowl. Like, yes, I do remember that he didn't play that well leading up to it, but the first 2 things I think of is Jalen Hurts went toe-to-toe with Mahomes in their first battle, and Jalen Hurts whipped his ass in the second one. Like, it's always going to outweigh. That's the first thing that you're going to think of. Ben Roethlisberger in his first playoff run, or when they went to the Super Bowl, his first Super Bowl run, he had a great lead up to those first 3 games. He played phenomenal leading up to that Seattle game. Didn't turn the ball over, had the game-sealing tackle in the AFC title game. Guess what? In the Super Bowl, he completed under 50% of his passes and threw 2 picks. That's what I remember. Like, even though they won the game, and even though he had a great run-up to the Super Bowl, what I remember is, and Ben had 2 turnovers, didn't get into the end zone because the refs gifted him a rushing TD and completed under 50% of his passes. In the Arizona Super Bowl, in the lead up to that game, he had a very average lead up to that, but he had the greatest game-winning drive to Santonio Holmes. The Super Bowl overpowers everything. And so I always try to remember everything about all the runs. This is going to be the lasting, sticking memory in everyone's brains. And so I don't think it's going to overtake or completely wipe away what happened, but it definitely is going to overshadow everything that happened in the lead up. It's the biggest game of the year. I think that's just how it happens naturally. But I'm not going to forget. We're going to remember these games. We're going to bring it up.
Right. I mean, you're probably right. It will outweigh the first 3 games if he plays great, in terms of the public memory and opinion. But I agree with what you said off the top, which is we should remember every game. I don't view it as some equation where it's one game outweighs all the others. If it's a good game, if it's a bad game, that's just not how I view things. Just like how 3 bad playoff games that May has had don't outweigh an MVP level regular season. Like, my opinion of Drake Maye is not significantly lower than it was coming into the playoffs just because he's had this bad 3-game stretch, because he had an amazing 17-game stretch leading up to it. Like, this is all just part of the picture of who Drake Maye is as a quarterback. And I said after the conference title game, like, Drake Maye has been bad in these playoffs, and it's just another point for what is not even an argument, what is just the inevitable reality that football is the ultimate team sport. And way too often people try to conflate wins with quarterback performance when at times the things can be totally at odds. Drake Maye has had his worst 3-game stretch of the year as his team has won 3 games and advanced to the Super Bowl because their defense has been amazing. I don't think anything I said there is arguable. And yet everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people somehow managed to misinterpret that take, or in my opinion, misconstrue that take in one way or another. I saw people being like, okay, well, it doesn't matter. He's going to play great next game. Okay, I specifically said in the take, I am not saying Drake Maye isn't great. I am not saying Drake Maye can't play great next game. I am a big Drake Maye believer. I'm saying he has been bad in this playoff run. Then I saw people saying, oh, Drake Maye is overrated. He's never actually been like that. Well, I totally disagree with that, because he elevated this offense to be second in EPA per play in the regular season with a bad offensive line, with average receivers, with an average run game. Like, he was a superstar. He was an incredible elevator. I've seen people doing the whole thing of like, oh, it doesn't matter. They're winning. They're winning. The point I'm making is that you can win without your quarterback playing well. It's a reality in the playoffs. I saw Kay Adams come out with actually one of the worst takes I've ever seen, put up this graphic comparing Drake Maye's playoff stats this year to Tom Brady's in his first playoff run, saying this is exactly why talking about quarterback stats in the playoffs is idiotic. And I don't know if I've ever seen somebody miss the point harder. It's like, no, what is idiotic is to say just because a quarterback won the game, if his defense allowed 7 points and basically scored 7 of their own, or his defense allowed 3 points as they did against the Chargers, that is in any way reflective of the quarterback performance. Like, just because he's Tom Brady, that doesn't mean he was an elite quarterback in his first Super Bowl run, because he wasn't. We have this memory of who Tom Brady was, and we want to merge all these runs together and say, oh, he was always that good. No, dude. He threw 1 touchdown pass in that run. He had 570 total yards because he was a second-year, 6th-round game manager at that point who got way, way better from that point forward. But in that run, yeah, he was carried by a dominant defense, and they leaned a lot on the run game. So I just thought that was an exceptionally bad take. But all of this is just to say, no, Drake Maye struggling up to this point doesn't mean that Drake Maye can't be great next game. And also, Drake Maye being great next game won't wipe away that he wasn't good in the first 3 games, just like him being bad in the first 3 games of the playoffs doesn't wipe away him being great in the 17 games of the regular season. Like, I just want to take a very holistic view of how a player plays. And I know that that maybe sounds very simple, and I think it is very simple. And that's just how we should evaluate players. When you get caught up in like all of this other stuff, I just think you end up kind of skewing reality with narratives.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I was going to say, I think a big issue is when people have these blind allegiances or blind loyalty. Like, when we have new data, I can't remember if you said this on the show, Carson, or if this was just a conversation that we had while we were in college, but you were like, a sign of intelligence is your ability to change your mind when presented with new data and new evidence. And so it's like, okay, Drake had an awesome regular season. We have seen him objectively play 3 bad playoff games. Like, maybe your opinion of him has changed because of bad 3 playoff games. Like, but it's his individual performance that we should be evaluating, and not the fact whether again, God, this seems like such a common sense argument to make, that his team won, because it's a team sport. And like, we can isolate his individual performance. Like, you shouldn't. It's so stupid. I feel like we're doing like a math equation, but it's actually really not that complicated at all. Like, we can see how he played. Like, and if Drake plays well in the Super Bowl, we should praise. It's like the Josh Allen shit over again, man. It actually drives me crazy. Like, it does. It makes me feel like an insane person when these are the type of arguments that people will make.
Me too. By the way, horrible look for me having that quote on my resume about it being a sign of intelligence to be willing to change your opinion when presented with new evidence, when I have sat here steadfast and said the Cleveland Cavaliers are like that. I don't care how many games they lose.
Yeah.
I don't care how many games they drop.
And I sat here for 2 years going,
around.
Trust me, just give Geno more snaps. He's going to figure it out, man. He's not going to throw that pick.
But Geno was balling. Geno was balling from 2022 to 2024. That's what they don't want you to know. He just fell off this year. Anyways, I agree. And it's just a very interesting phenomenon in sports, right? People always want to point to, oh, this is what he did. He did the little things to get them the win. And it's like, okay, guess what? If they score 10 points in a playoff game, they lose a vast majority of the time. And that's what they did last week, right? Their offense has performed worse through 3 games than any other team's offense that has ever made the Super Bowl. They have scored 15.7 points per game offensively. They have converted 30% of their third downs. That'd be worst in the NFL. They've averaged 4.35 yards per play. That would be worst in the NFL effectively. It's the same as what the Browns did this regular season. Like, we have to be able to understand what leads to wins and what leads to losses in sports and how to parse out the credit and blame for that purely based on how the player played. I really do think it's that simple. I saw our friend Mars on Player's Choice talking about this the other day. I feel like I'm mentioning Player Choice clips a lot, but it's because they're what pop up first in my Instagram. And he was talking about how basically that's all we have to do, right? Just evaluate how the player played. Perfect example. Okay, 2010, Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Kobe Bryant goes 6 of 24. The Lakers gut out that game in a slugfest. And so Kobe gets praised for having the persistent mentality, right? For not going away, for doing the little things in that game. Because they won. And they won because they had a dominant defensive performance. They won because Pau Gasol had 19 rebounds in that game. All these other things. Right? If they lose that game, it is the complete opposite narrative. This is the problem with Kobe as a player. He's a shot chucker. He's not efficient enough. He's always looking for his own shot. Like, that dichotomy to me, it doesn't make sense. It will never make sense. It's the reality in sports, but we are trying to combat it.
You're building your conclusion based on the result. You're not building
a team result. You are now making about individual player performances.
Exactly.
Which just doesn't make sense in a team sport, especially a sport like football where you are completely uninvolved in one half of the game, in the third phase of the game, that being special teams. I know that we say this stuff all the time, but yeah, the whole notion of like, oh, he did enough. Well, if he did enough because he got a level of defensive help that nobody has gotten in the playoffs in decades, like, a lot of other guys could have done enough in those same circumstances. So anyways, that's kind of my overall Drake Maye take. There were a lot of questions about this. I think Drake Maye is great. This playoff run has not changed my opinion of that. I mean, it's been concerning. It hasn't been what I wanted to see. Doesn't change the fact that, yeah, he could have a great performance, and I think he's going to have an elite season next year, and also he's just way ahead of schedule for being in year 2, which actually raises a fun question from Eric. Are there any good historical comps for Maye's second season? I was thinking 84 Marino, 05 Big Ben, or 21 Burrow. Do you like any of those or any other comps, Logan?
Yeah, they're good shouts in terms of his second season. I would say I don't want to throw the 84 Marino comparison around lightly because we're never going to see anything like that again. That record held for
18 Mahomes?
Well, that's a good shout. I just mean relative to the era. Dan Marino threw 48 touchdowns. That record wasn't shattered for 20 seasons. What I mean by that is like relative to era, that's like somebody throwing 60 TDs in a season. Like, it is almost unthinkable doing that in 1984. That's why I just hold Dan Marino in such rarefied air and have such a respect for him. Like, doing that back then is almost impossible to think about. And so I don't want to throw that around. In terms of how successful they were in their second seasons in the regular season, I do think that's a good comp. Like, how good they were amongst their peers. Drake Maye was one of the best quarterbacks in football in his second season. That is undeniable. In terms of playoffs, I don't know. I don't really have a playoff comparison for this. Carson, I mean, can you read out that defensive stat about the Patriots again?
Yeah, which one do you want? All of them? Fourth
with
fewest
the
points
85
allowed by
Bears.
a team through their first 3 playoff games with the 85 Bears, 2,000 Ravens, and 86 Giants, the only teams ahead of them.
Look, guys, I'm not trying to be disrespectful when I say this. I don't have a historical precedent because Carson is giving you he's putting up Trent Dilfer, like, you know what I mean? Like, shout out for Drake Maye for getting first downs. He's not putting the ball in the end zone. So, like, I kind of fail to even compare Maye to a quarterback on a run in these playoffs that has ever done something like this. Like, quarterbacks who play as poorly as Drake Maye and have not put the ball in the end zone rarely get this far in the playoffs. I don't have a comp. Like, you could even go, I don't know, man. It's like Mark Sanchez with the Jets. Like, I don't know, man. There's not like a really good playoff run that I can point to with a quarterback this young because so much of the heavy lifting is being done by the defense. I think and honestly, in terms of the stark contrast between Maye's regular season performance and playoffs, I think it's completely unique. I don't really have a comparison quite like what Maye has done. It's one of the most unique playoff runs and scenarios I've ever seen in my football watching career.
I agree. I mean, it is very unique. Like I said, they have the fewest points scored across the wild card, divisional, and conference championship games en route to a Super Bowl appearance in NFL history. And it's them, the team that is closest is the 2000 Ravens, in fact, who scored 7 more points. And the Patriots also have a defensive touchdown in there, which the 2000 Ravens might have as well. I can't remember. But in terms of historical comps, I kind of like 21 Burrow most at this point. Coming into the playoffs, Drake Maye was my MVP, right? So in terms of being at that level, well, the only guys to ever win MVP in their second year as a quarterback are Marino, Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson, all of whom I think had more outstanding MVP seasons than Maye, so I would have had them all above him, with the possibility for that to change in a playoff run, right? If he was exceptional, Maye, because Lamar struggled in the playoffs that year, for example. The other two, I mean, I think Marino and Mahomes are like just flat out locks for being the top 2 second-year quarterbacks in NFL history. So then I come to this 21 Burrow comparison, and I think Maye's regular season was a bit better. Burrow was really good in the regular season, but he was not in MVP conversations. He didn't do quite as much heavy lifting for his offense. He wasn't quite as efficient. I mean, what Maye's done as a scrambler this year was beyond what Burrow was doing with his legs. And also just Maye led the better offense this year, even though I think he had, I would say, less help than Burrow did. Because although Burrow's offensive line was really bad, worse than Maye's Patriots offensive line even, he did have more help in terms of receivers. So I would say Maye's regular season was a bit better. Burrow's postseason was a bit better, but there's a lot of just big picture similarities in the sense that like both quarterbacks played at about a top 5 level in the regular season, right? Somewhere in that probably, 4th to 7th best quarterback in the league kind of range, big picture at least. And then ironically, weren't great in a run to the Super Bowl. Burrow, I want to be clear, was much better in the Bengals run than Maye has been because I mean, Maye has had major turnover problems, 5 turnovers, 3 more fumbles that weren't recovered by the defense, and the offense has just flat out been anemic, facing really good defenses, yes, but like terrible, terrible offensive performances. Burrow was definitely better. He led a couple game-winning drives. He was solid in that run, but he did have a negative EPA per dropback, and I do think that run was overrated on his resume for a long time because he got a lot of help from a kicker who went 14 of 14 on field goals, a defense that was elite in that run that held the Raiders to 19 points, the Titans to 16, the Chiefs to 3 points across the second half of that game and overtime. So there's some similarities there. And then I also think both guys took a shit ton of sacks behind subpar offensive lines. In fact, Logan, they already have the top 2 marks for sacks taken in a single postseason in NFL history. Burrow took 19. Maye has already taken 15, so he could break that record. Both of these guys took huge leaps after really rough rookie seasons, and they were super highly drafted. Like, it's never going to be a 1-to-1 comp, obviously, and I'm not comping Burrow to Maye as a player. Let me be very clear about that. The play styles, the skill sets are different. In terms of the vibes, though, in terms of kind of like the story of the season, in terms of the overall level the guys are at, I think that's probably the most apt comparison for a second-year QB campaign at this point.
I think that's a good one. It's just, and the fact that, like, we do the QB attribution thing where the defense does a lot of the heavy lifting. I think that's a good shout. I think I tend to agree.
And again, I want to be clear, right? It's not 1-to-1. Burrow was fine in that run, whereas like May has been bad. But it's just if we're painting broad strokes, because you have to. I mean, there's only so many second-year quarterbacks who like really have any similarities to what Drake Maye has done this year. I would say that is probably the closest comparison. Jack Ryan, shout out to you, man. Who's playing Jack Ryan these days? John Krasinski? Is that his show? Shout out to you, Jack Ryan. How do you see Milton Williams and the Pats D-line doing against the Hawks O-line? How does the Hawks D-line do against the Pats O-line? And specifically, do you think Will Campbell will hold up against them? Some trench questions, Logan. What do you think?
I like the Seahawks D-line versus the New England offensive line more than I like the New England defensive line versus the Seahawks offensive line. That's how I would put it. I don't think it's a big gap, though. But I am concerned about the left side of the line for New England. That's my biggest concern. Those two rookies over there versus Seattle, like, that's just a lot to ask of those guys. And they've kind of been turnstiles in these playoffs thus far. Like, I do worry about them. Where, look, Barmore and Milton Williams and Chason and Landry, like, it's not an easy matchup for Seattle either. But I just have more faith in Seattle's offensive line. I've been consistently impressed with them throughout this year. Gray Zabel stepping in here and being a difference maker. Charles Cross being a legitimate, like, franchise kind of tackle for this team. Like, I thought Seattle's offensive line was one of the worst in football coming into the year. I think they're closer to a top 10 unit. When I look at New England, I also thought New England was going to be one of the worst offensive lines in football. I think they're like league average to like 20th if I had to pick them. So I just favor the Seattle offensive line a little more, but I don't think it's an easy matchup by any means for either of these two teams.
Yeah, and I would say the defensive line is the stronger unit on both sides. Like you said, I think the Seahawks defensive line probably like really eats New England's offensive line alive. Seattle was 4th in pressure rate this year. And what's so challenging is it's not just about the edges, it's that interior pressure. It's what Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy do that can just be so disruptive to an offense, both in terms of the passing game, but even more so in terms of the run game. So that's a really, really tough matchup, especially for an offensive line that I do think is definitely below average in New England. And the Patriots 8th in terms of pressure rate allowed this year. That is going to be a huge challenge for them holding up against the Seattle defensive front. I will say, though, as important as anything, we look at the sack numbers and we think, okay, obviously that's a reflection on the Patriots offensive line and their issues protecting for Drake Maye. But Drake Maye's sack evasion, Drake Maye's pocket awareness, his pocket feel, that is every bit as important because, you know what's crazy, Logan? In the playoffs, Maye has been sacked 15 times, right? We all know that. On 32 pressures, though. 32 pressures. When you're getting sacked on almost 50% of your pressures, that's on you, buddy. That's on you as the quarterback. Like, that's a terrible pressure to sack rate.
It was.
It was 47 sacks he took in the regular season, and obviously that has come in the playoffs with 6 fumbles across the first 2 games. So that's going to be a huge swing factor. It's not just can they protect for Maye, it's can Maye avoid the sacks, avoid the strip sack especially. Absolutely key matchup that I think definitely favors Seattle defensively. But then I also think if you look at the Patriots defensive line versus the Seahawks offensive line, the interior matchup there definitely favors New England because I think the Seahawks tackles are quite good, and I think the Patriots edges are relatively uninspiring. Like Chason, he's been playing well, but there's a reason that they've really struggled to get pressure with 4, and they've been blitzing so much more in the playoffs. It's because they don't have that real high-quality edge play. However, I do think there's more of a vulnerability in terms of the Seattle interior offensive line, and that is where the Patriots defense is really strong, particularly with Milton Williams up front. So that's what that matchup's going to come down to. Interior pressure, the big boys stopping the run for New England, which, again, they've been excellent at with Milton Williams on the field. And then I still think New England is going to blitz a ton. I think they have to bring that extra pressure because of their edge limitations. They've been super aggressive throughout the playoffs. But, again, now they're not facing Jared Stidham. Now they're not facing C.J. Stroud. Now they're not facing the Chargers offensive line. So can they get away with that level of aggression is the question. But specifically, I can see Milton Williams making it really hard for Seattle to run the ball, which is something that Seattle struggled to do efficiently for a lot of the year. Then they really got the run game going down the home stretch of the year. Ton on Kenneth Walker's plate now with Charbonnet out now, of course. So definitely those matchups in the trenches are key on both sides of the ball. Okay. Those are kind of all the questions we have about the Super Bowl specifically. Again, we're going to preview every key in great detail next week. It'll be a whole lot of fun. But I love this question from Elliot, who asks, Super Bowl outcome aside, what parts of this season do you think will stick in people's minds 5, 10, 20 years from now? Which parts will be unfortunately forgotten? Love the show. Thank you, Elliot.
This is me being pessimistic. I think the parts of this season that likely may unfortunately get forgotten are just how good the Broncos and Texans teams were. I say this pessimistically because if you look at a track record year to year, the hardest thing to replicate year over year is a number 1 or number 2 defense. And so unfortunately, that is what normally gets lost to the sands of time, is just really elite one-year defenses. What I'm going to remember from this year, I'm definitely going to remember, obviously, the Seahawks just completely overtaking all of my expectations. I'm going to remember the same for New England. I'm probably just going to remember the fact that the Chiefs, Ravens, Bengals, and Bills, like all just – and the Bills are in a different class because at least they got to the playoffs. But the fact that so many of these big-time quarterbacks missed out on the dance, like – it's going to stick in my mind that Lamar didn't get there, that Mahomes didn't get there, that the Bengals didn't get there with Burrow, that, like, what a weird conference title we ended up with. Like, that's what I remember more than anything when I think about 2017. The fact that Case Keenum, Blake Bortles, Nick Foles, and Tom Brady were doing battle in a conference championship game. It's so weird. Like, not that it's unprecedented to have like one of these guys, right? If it's a Mark Sanchez that gets to the dance, right? Like normally there's one guy that maybe you go, okay, this team carried him to the title game. But the quarterback aspects kind of everything are going to stick out in my mind. And the Jets not getting an interception, I'm never going to forget that. How the hell does that happen?
That's a great shot.
How do you play 17 games of football and you don't get an interception, man? Like That twists my brain, bruh.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great shot. However, I would say that's probably more likely to be forgotten, unfortunately, in the annals of history. I think the kind of wildness of the AFC this year is a good shout, just how this has been a conference with a lot of stability at the top comparatively, specifically the teams with those elite quarterbacks. And this year was a total reversal of that. I mean, it was a lot of great defenses and teams with less stellar quarterbacks and younger quarterbacks. I do think the Bills' loss is going to be very memorable. I mean, I don't know how it couldn't be. It was just such a crazy game and such a chaotic finish. And obviously, this was an opportunity for them that they did not convert on, and controversial calls, all those things I think are going to make that game very memorable. I do think, specifically, though, if we look at like the AFC teams that missed out, I think Mahomes and the Chiefs missing the playoffs is what's really going to be remembered. Like, listen, the Bengals have missed the playoffs for the last 3 years, so that's not surprising at this point. The Ravens, it is surprising, absolutely, but they obviously have had a lot of playoff shortcomings. They've only won 3 playoff games in the Lamar era. They missed the playoffs entirely in 2021 as well. My point is, like, those just are not nearly as unprecedented occurrences as a Kansas City team that was on the greatest 7-year run we've seen in the history of this sport. I would say 7 straight AFC title games, 5 Super Bowl appearances, 3 Super Bowl wins. For them to fully miss out, win 6 games, it all ends with Mahomes tearing his ACL when they're already 6-8 and the season is all but lost. But like, I just think seasons like that, when you're in the midst of a dynastic run, they stand out so much. Because I do think the Chiefs are going to be back. I think the Chiefs are going to contend again. If they don't, though, obviously, well, that's going to be the beginning of the end. Regardless, it's like, it's just a pivotal moment. It's like, okay, is this a la the 08 Pats, where, by the way, even that year, they actually were successful with Matt Castle, but Brady's huge injury.
Won 10 games.
Is this a moment that you bounce back from? Or is this a moment that ultimately, again, signifies kind of a downfall? Regardless, I think that's going to stand out in the collective memory for a long, long time. I hope the NFC title game gets remembered because that was an incredible game between two incredible teams, in my opinion, the two best in the NFL this year. I hope the legendary wild card weekend that we got overall, I mean, the insanity of Bears-Packers, one of the great comebacks that we've seen. Bills-Jags was just an excellent, excellent game. The drama of the near upset in Rams-Panthers, like, that was just such an awesome weekend of football. Niners-Eagles, the reigning Super Bowl champ goes out ugly. Like, that was definitely one of the best weekends of playoff football I've ever seen. I think the 2025 Bears are going to be remembered just for the magic of it all. And this is a franchise that has suffered so much, and they had such a crazy turnaround and 7 wins in which they were trailing at the 2-minute warning. Like, just absolute insanity. And Myles Garrett breaking the sack record, bro. That better be remembered. That will be remembered because when you set a record, that's cemented in history. But one of the greatest defensive seasons we've ever seen from one of the greatest defensive players we've ever seen. Those are kind of all the things that come to the top of mind for me. In terms of what do I worry will be forgotten, you kind of touched on this. I worry about the Texans defense specifically, just because I think it was such a completely dominant unit that was somehow even more dominant in the playoffs than they were in the regular season, and they just got failed by their offense. And I feel like it's harder for people to remember individual, utterly dominant defensive units than offensive units, probably more so because, like, if you're a truly elite offense, you're probably going deeper in the playoffs, whereas if you're a truly elite defense, it's easier to be failed by your offense.
When you win the Super Bowl as a defense like that, like, you get immortalized, right?
Totally.
Like, nobody's going to forget the Legion of Boom. Nobody's going to forget the no-fly zone. Nobody's going to forget those Ravens or Buccaneers defenses. But when you come up short, I feel like it is harder to
right,
really be cemented.
And, like, how many people are going to remember the 2023 Browns? You know, that was a completely dominant defense. Yeah. And I just don't know that they're going to go down like that because they had an offense that was really bad. But even that team, like, they did have a not great showing in the playoffs defensively against the Texans. This Texans defense, fucking totally dominant in the playoffs, comfortably number 1 in total defensive EPA per play if you look at regular season plus playoffs this year. So, yeah, I will advocate for that group in whatever very niche football conversations they come up in. And also, what do I think will be forgotten? That the first 2.5 quarters of Broncos Patriots were played in totally normal conditions. Because as I predicted, Logan, from my crystal ball last show, already we're seeing that. Already we're seeing people act like that entire game was played in a blizzard. And it's like, nope. We all saw 2.5 quarters of really shitty offense from both sides before the conditions got really bad. Alas, the conditions are going to be very memorable, but you know me, man. I'm just trying to preserve reality over here. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5.
It's super easy to get started on Prize Picks as they're available in all 50 states.
With the new social feeds feature, you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. Also, as a new feature, Prize Picks now has early payouts. So if your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes.
It's super easy to get started with Prize Picks as they're available in all 50 states. And Prize Picks helps me scratch that itch, even though fantasy season is already done. Even in the playoffs, you can pick your favorite players and win when they hit their projections every week without any draft required. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code NERDSESH to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code NERDSESH to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
Okay, I lied. We aren't done with Super Bowl questions. We have 2 more that I accidentally skipped past, so let's get to those. Basketball School asks, if both quarterbacks switched teams and May was on the Seahawks and Darnold was on the Pats, which team would be more successful and which quarterback would have the better season? It's kind of a fun thought experiment.
I'm not trying to hate. I definitely think it's Drake Maye. When we just look at, like, the personnel that is around them, I just think the Seahawks have the better offensive line. I think they have the better number one running back. Running back's honestly the closest battle between K9 and I like the tandem of Stevenson and Henderson, but wideouts where there's a huge gap. Shout out Diggs. Diggs had a great year. I think he's somebody that Drake Maye needed to have success this year. But then he's throwing to Kayshon Boutte and Pop Douglas. Sam Darnold has one of the best receivers in football in Jackson Smith and Jigba, and that's the big difference to me. I think he's also got both of these guys have really brilliant offensive coordinators. Kubiak, I think, is a guy that deserves a shot at being a head coach. McDaniels is obviously one of those guys that needs to be an offensive coordinator. He's a bad head coach, but I think they're both elevated by their OCs. I think they've got solid running games, good offensive lines, but I think Seattle's got the better offensive mind. I think they've got the better offensive line, and I think they've got the better receiving talent. But, yeah, I think May's just a little bit more talented. I think Maye elevated his situation just a little bit more than Darnold did.
I mean, if we just look bottom line, Drake Maye is absolutely the better quarterback. And if you look at this regular season, he led the significantly better offense, 4th in points per drive. The Seahawks were 11th in points per drive, and he did it while creating more total offense, being more accurate, being more efficient, producing more touchdowns, turning the ball over less, doing way more with his legs as a creator. All the while, he had less help. I think that that's pretty clear, and so that's why, obviously, the inclination is to look at this and say, okay, May's the better quarterback. May had the better season. May led the much better regular season offense with less help. If you swap the quarterbacks, obviously the Seahawks have the better season because now they have the better quarterback. But, Logan, here's my interesting counter argument to that. Drake Maye has been bad in the playoffs. And to beat the Rams, Sam Darnold had to be amazing in that game. He had a phenomenal performance. So, with how Drake Maye has been playing in the playoffs up to this point, is he winning that game for Seattle? Probably not. I mean, not with the level that he's been playing at. That being said,
the thing is
we're doing a thought experiment on top of a thought experiment there. I'm just trying to come up with an interesting angle
we're
here.
getting
Drake May's better than Sam Darnold.
We're gonna warp my brain with the hypotheticals. But
Drake May's better than Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold has been much better than Drake Maye in these playoffs, and they needed a great quarterback performance to get to this point in these playoffs. That would be my argument for it's an interesting conversation.
Well said. My only counter argument to that would be, Jesus Christ, Drake Maye has played in 2 of the worst weather condition games I've ever seen. I don't really know what to do with that.
I think when you get into a hypothetical, you say the better player makes the team better. And so, yeah, I would say Maye on that front. But I do think that regular season versus playoff performance aspect is interesting because both these teams had great regular seasons, but what matters is can they win the Super Bowl? And Darnold has more than carried his weight to get the Seahawks to the Super Bowl, whereas Maye has been much more so carried up to this point by that great defense, just in the playoffs, of course. Beat New England asks, if Seattle's defense has a dominant showing, are they the best defense in the league over Houston? Since Nick has been healthy, they've been top of the league in almost every advanced metric.
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, I think that's been the strength of this team. I mean, they dogged the Niners. I know the Niners are down a lot of key personnel, but they dogged them. I wish that the weather had been better in the last 2 games for the entirety, because then we'd have a direct sample. We could be that's the only thing that I struggle with, because we're going to see Drake Maye take on the top 3 defenses in all of the NFL. And no quarterback in NFL history, the thing that is still going to make this run impressive in totality, no quarterback in NFL history has had to defeat 4 top 5 defenses en route to winning a Super Bowl. Drake Maye would be the first in NFL history. But, we did see the Broncos kind of shut down the Patriots, held them to 10 points. We did see the Texans shut down the Patriots. So, we do have direct comparisons, but the fact that Seattle has gotten through here, the fact that they had such a good performance against an explosive offense in the Rams, I would consider them. And it's the secondary. That's the biggest gap that I've been banging the drum for in Seattle. I think the Texans have the best defensive front in the NFL with what they had with Hunter and Anderson. Linebackers, I think I probably lean Denver.
Oh, out of all of them? That's fair.
Seattle, it's definitely the secondary, though, and I think in totality, I think Seattle's got the best. The fact that they are so good against the run out of nickel is astounding. I don't know if I've ever seen a group like this that is so good at slowing down the opposing team's rushing attack while being in, down a linebacker and up a defensive back. But they've got the best. They've got one of the best tackling in secondaries in totality I think I've ever seen.
I'm just going to sit here and say it depends, I got to see it because I'm neck and neck with those two defenses, Houston and Seattle. I think Denver's great. I do think they had a few too many performances down the stretch of the year where Jacksonville poured points on them. Green Bay had a really good offensive showing against them. Buffalo scored 30 on them, and I give Denver's defense a lot of credit for getting stops in that game with turnovers. But other than that, they didn't get a single stop. It was all the turnovers. Buffalo had 28 first downs in that game. They had 450-something yards of offense. They put up 30 points. So I think Denver's defense is great. I don't think they are quite in that Houston-Seattle level. Like I said, Houston was even more impressive in the playoffs than in the regular season. I mean, they just did historic stuff with 2 defensive touchdowns and 9 sacks, and the defense only allowed 27 points over those 2 games. They were absolutely incredible, and they shut down elite offenses over and over again this year. If it was Kansas City with Mahomes when he was healthy, if it was the Colts with Daniel Jones when they were humming, if it was the Buffalo Bills in the regular season, including, of course, New England. And they let up a couple explosives in that game, but New England won with unprecedented offensive circumstances in that game. I'll read out a couple of the stats that just put into perspective how crazy New England's run has been up to this point, because in that game against Houston, they became the first team since 1987 to win a playoff game with 250 yards or fewer, 13 first downs or fewer, and 3+ turnovers. The last 30 teams to post those marks all lost by an average of 21.3 points per game. They went 3 of 14 on third down in that game. They took 5 sacks. They had 4 yards per play. So Houston's defense was amazing. They shut down New England. That does give us kind of direct comparison. I'll agree with you. The conditions were rougher in that game, absolutely, than they're going to be in Santa Clara. But the fact that Houston did that to New England, and then Denver, in that game, New England became the first team to win in the playoffs with fewer than 210 yards of offense in a decade. They became the first team to win a playoff game, averaging 3.2 yards per player fewer in 2 decades. So, yeah, I mean, we've seen the other 2 top 3 defenses really shut down New England in these playoffs. If Seattle does it again, it's just going to come down to how dominant is the fashion in which they do it. Right now, I think Houston, what they've done to great offenses, the fact that they are number 1 in total EPA per play, the fact they do have the best combination of edge rusher and cornerback play I think we've ever seen. I'd give them the tiniest nod. But, I mean, Seattle could totally shut down the run. Seattle gets a lot of pressure in their own right. Seattle's secondary, absolutely insane. And the one thing is Seattle allows 0 explosive plays. Houston allows a couple, right? I mean, they allowed an average amount of 20+ yard passes this season. That is the one thing in their defense that is not perfect, whereas Seattle's defense, I would say, is completely bulletproof. So, are you going to get a Kayshon Boutte shot play against Seattle like you did against Houston? We're just going to have to wait and see. I'll say I am open to this for sure. Right now, I would probably still give Houston the slightest edge as best defense in the league. But as I've said many times, I think both Houston and Seattle are 2 of the best defenses we've seen this century, period. And what probably will happen is if Seattle wins the Super Bowl, their defense becomes remembered much more than Houston's because they'll be viewed as a defensive team that won it all. But they'll be a defensive team that won it all in part because they also had a quarterback who could have a great offensive performance, put up 31 points like they did against the Rams, and C.J. Stroud had an aneurysm for 4 quarters against the New England Patriots. Okay, now we're done with the Super Bowl questions for real. However, we do have another question about some of the recent news that we've seen that does involve a New England Patriots legend. Bomadou asks, do you think it's possible that Belichick is being delayed his Hall of Fame induction? For those who haven't seen, Bill Belichick is not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He did not make the necessary 40 out of 50 votes to get in. Do you think that's being delayed by the committee until 2028 so they can have a Patriot Hall of Fame night with Brady and Robert Kraft? Kraft is eligible in 2027. I wouldn't be surprised if he waits or the committee waits for him for 2028 as well. What do you think, Logan? Is that what's going on here?
No, not at all. You did a video on social that you posted last night that I completely agree with. I just think it's something that we see with Hall of Fames. It wasn't shocking at all to me. I saw people in our Discord kind of flipping out going, how does he not get in? Like, dude, Pete Rose was betting on games, and the Baseball Hall of Fame still took
Banned him
issue.
for
You
life.
mentioned Barry Bonds. Like, different Hall of Fames have different standards. Basketball kind of lets anybody in, and you don't have to be an NBA legend. You just have to be a basketball legend. Baseball and football Hall of Fames have repeatedly shown us that if you have any stain, football's weird. Football to me is the most arbitrary, where the biggest instance is Terrell Owens. Yeah. Terrell Owens is one of the greatest receivers of all time, is so clearly a no-brainer, first ballot Hall of Famer, and they kept him out because he had a personality, attitude, because he had an interview in his driveway one time because he cried at the podium. Like, it's so strange to me that, like that they would hold it against T.O. Bill actually makes sense to me. Bill cheated. Like, Bill actually compromised the integrity of the game. I completely understand them holding him accountable for that. I still got beef. Fuck you, Bill. You're a cheater. You're the greatest coach of all time. You're a cheater. I don't like cheaters. So, I have no issue. I'm not surprised at all. I think that football and baseball have shown us that if you have got any kind of stain on your resume, whether it be it petty with like a TO or whether it be real, that you have a real hang-up with Bill about Spygate, and people try to, it's so funny to me the way people try to distance themselves and, that should never happen. No, bruh. Before Super Bowls, Bill was sending someone to practices of the other team and recording them. A minor one that people don't even talk about now. Bill would send in a lackey to the opposing team's locker room before the game started to see if he could steal a game script for the first drive of the game. And I know some people are of the belief, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Okay. And I guess, you know what, man, if there's a loophole and you can exploit it, congrats. It fucks with my morals if my coach were to do that, and I completely understand them holding Bill accountable. Bill knows what he did, and Bill knows that he did it, and he cheated, and it's been proven, and he didn't get held accountable as a coach where, if that happened, I think it would have been justifiable to kick Bill out of the league or, to have a more serious reckoning when he was actually coaching the Patriots. That didn't happen, and nothing ever serious came out about that. So, yeah, I understand them doing it now. I think you made a tremendous point in the video you made last night, Carson. If we're not going to hold actual bad people accountable for things that they did in real life that actually mattered, why are we holding Bill's feet to the fire for cheating in a game? I don't know, man. It doesn't make sense, but like I said, they have shown if you have anything that could, hinder your case, they're going to make it be known that you're not a first ballot guy. If you don't have a squeaky clean resume, you're not going to get in on first ballot. So I may not agree with the ruling, but the Hall of Fames have at least shown us that they're consistent.
Yeah. Well, I want to be very clear. I think this is incredibly stupid. I'm just not surprised by it. And again, not to just moan about people misconstruing my takes, because that's what happens to literally everybody, but I did see some people being like, yikes, how are you defending this? And I'm like, I'm not defending this. I don't know how many times I need to say, I think this is extremely stupid. I'm just not surprised by it. It is consistent. The TO thing is so much dumber than this. And again, I think they're both really dumb. But to deny a top 3 receiver ever, make him wait multiple years just because you kind of don't like the guy. He didn't do anything bad. He just had a personality. Like, absolutely ridiculous. This, I do think, is ridiculous, but we have seen Hall of Fame's willingness, and some people say, okay, well, don't compare the Pro Football Hall of Fame to the Pro Baseball Hall of Fame, but both of them have the precedent of coming down extremely hard on those who are perceived as cheating. And they're all different situations, right? I think most people would say, okay, Barry Bonds using actual performance-enhancing drugs is more significant than Bill Belichick trying to find these little ways to cheat on the margins, and I can agree with that. But I guess my point is fundamentally, either one of these guys, no doubt Hall of Famers without the cheating, okay? They shouldn't have done it. It's a bad thing, but I think it is incredibly misguided for these Hall of Fame voters to try to be the arbiters of, who's a good guy? Who's got a perfect enough moral record that we can let them write in when it's like, guys, You've already completely failed at that, okay? Karl Malone sexually assaulted a 13-year-old, and he's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. Like you said, they let everybody in. But, bro, the Baseball Hall of Fame, and yeah, okay, whatever, it's a different time. They've got a literal Klansman in there. Like, there's a murderer in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Why the fuck are we drawing the line at T.O. talk too much? Bill Belichick had, yes, 2 cheating scandals, okay? That is real. That really happened. You can't deny that. But he's the greatest coach of all time, and he would be the greatest coach of all time without that stuff. So, Logan, I'm with you. I'm anti-cheating. I'm anti-cheating in all phases of life. Maybe people think I'm a goober for that, but I don't know. I'm watching the Australian Open last night. Novak Djokovic wins the point, okay? It appears that his opponent, Musetti, has missed the shot. Djokovic says, no, you know what? I touched that with the very tip of my racket. That's his point. He concedes the point. I think that's fucking awesome. I think people should be good people, and I get it's competition.
It's definitely like if you're
you don't want to be the guy in the commercial. I know everybody says that.
No, that one's the worst.
No, a team game. You know what? That's fair. That's fair. All right, because then you're compromising other people.
That's like bank error in your favor. You know.
Yeah. Okay, that is fair. However, personal accountability, I think, is a good thing.
Shout out.
Integrity, I think, is a good thing. Bill Belichick, not a man that I would praise for his integrity, but absolutely a man I would praise for being the greatest defensive mind in the history of this game, the greatest coach in the history of this game. And what I can certainly say is, no, he was not kept out to set up some beautiful Patriot celebration. He was kept out because Hall of Fame voters are stupid, because the criteria they vote with is stupid. We need to enforce Hall of Fames purely voting based on performance, because again, they're terrible at legislating morality. Just take it out of it and just say, on the basis of what this guy did on the field, on the court, should he be in the Hall of Fame? Bill Belichick is 100% of the time a very obvious first ballot Hall of Famer. That change should be made because, as I mentioned in the video I made, look, Spygate, okay, yeah, that's a Belichick thing. Deflategate was a Brady thing. They're both involved in both these scandals. One of them is the face of each. So if you're going to deny the greatest coach ever because he had 2 cheating scandals, are you now just going to immediately let in the greatest quarterback ever, even though he was involved in the same 2 scandals and was mostly responsible for one of them? Obviously, Tom Brady should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But with this dumbass criteria the Hall of Fame is imposed, it would be inconsistent, in my opinion, to make him one. That being said, I hope they do make him one. 2 wrongs do not make a right. Many wrongs do not make a right. I'm just not surprised the Hall of Fame proceeded this way. That's what it comes down to. But no, they're not setting up for some wonderful Patriot Hall of Fame night. I think Bill Polian is really fucking bitter towards Bill Belichick, and I think he was able to organize a campaign. And again, it's not even inconsistent with traditional Hall of Fame voting. It's just there's a lot of bad Hall of Fame voting. I wish we could start them all from scratch. Maybe we should just do a Nerd Sesh Hall of Fame, because we'd get that shit right.
Bill Polian was the Colts GM and team president from 98 to 2011. Yeah, man, I think he's got a few grudges.
Yeah, he's got some bad memories, that's for sure. Speaking of bad memories, Logan, Julian asks, Broncos are in the Super Bowl with Bo Nix, and he is the quarterback of the future. True or false?
If Bo Nix doesn't get hurt, the Broncos win the Super Bowl, and he's Super Bowl MVP. He is the Broncos QB of the future. If you put Bo Nix on either of these teams, I would guarantee a Super Bowl. That's how I feel.
That's how Logan feels. He has been paid by the Supernova Super PAC. Nothing that he says is genuine.
No.
He has been bought. He is a bought asset.
No, I just believe that.
Mm-hmm. My honest answer, I think the Broncos would be in the Super Bowl if Bo Nix was healthy.
Yeah.
Jared Stidham had to gift the other team a touchdown. That is what you just said, but I'm saying it genuinely from the heart. You're saying it because you've been bought by mega corporations. Yeah, I mean, Jared Stidham was horrible, and if Bo Nix had just not played a horrible game, it would have been enough. The Patriots offense generated 3 points in that game.
Denver let their OC go. Lombardi's gone. I think they're going to promote Davis Webb, but we'll see.
They should promote Davis Webb. Dude. Cal Bears legend, Buffalo Bills legend. And yeah, the Bills talked to him to be their head coach, which that's probably a little bit hasty, but he should be OC. Anyways, yes, I think they would be in the Super Bowl if Bo Nix stayed healthy. Is he the quarterback of the future? I think jury's still out. I think this was overall an encouraging season for Bo. I was impressed by his performance in the playoff game. I still think even in that one, you saw some of the pocket jitteriness. You saw some of the inaccuracy, right? There was an extended stretch of the second half when he was struggling, but there's enough talent there. when it comes to really the mobility above all else and some of the variety in terms of arm angles. And even though the Broncos were a very mediocre offense this year, Bo's a second-year quarterback. He can still get better. I'm not ready to stamp him as a franchise guy, but I think clearly he's shown that he is a starter in this league, and I guarantee you the Broncos are not going to be looking elsewhere. Like, they definitely are bought in to him, and we'll see how he looks. Speedy recovery to him, obviously. Just fucking brutal luck. Terrible end of the season. But we'll see what he and Denver can do next year. And according to Logan, that will be win the Super Bowl and win every Super Bowl until the end of time. You know who didn't win the Super Bowl, Logan, though? These couple teams. Clancy asks, with the Lions and Chiefs surprisingly missing the playoffs this year, who do you guys think will be a surprising team to miss the playoffs next year?
It's a good question. Honestly, New England. Philadelphia. I'm looking at the thing about the NFL is you can get really fucked by that first place schedule. So I would flip on a few teams. Pittsburgh's going to miss the playoffs next year. Philly's going to miss the playoffs next year. Chicago's going to have a real shot at missing the playoffs again next year. Again, these are all teams that are going to be playing a first place schedule. And depending on Bo Nix's recovery time, I think it's a real chance that Denver could miss it next year. I don't know what the stat is, but, every year during the preview cycle, X amount of teams always miss, X amount of new teams always get into the playoff picture.
I think it's 4 teams every year, right? 4 new teams every
that
single
sounds
year,
right. And so, injuries are always a big determinant to year in and year out, but I would concretely say I think Pittsburgh and Philly and Chicago would be three of my picks to likely miss the playoffs next year.
Chicago is the best shout in my opinion. New England is an interesting one because the schedule is going to get a lot tougher. That being said, the defense has just impressed me so much in the playoffs. I think that's legit, and May is great, so I think they're going to be back. The Bears are the team that stands out to me just because even though they impressed me in the playoffs, like, they're 2-4 in their division this year. That division is absolutely brutal. The defense really struggled for most of the year, and they played really well for the last 6 quarters of the season, but I still think that defense has to meaningfully get better. I think they need way more of a pass rush. I think they need to get way better against the run. Overall, the Bears were just 16th in DVOA. These are all reasons I was skeptical of them going into the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They played the Rams close in their second playoff game. Props to them for that. I do believe in Caleb. I do believe in Ben Johnson. I do believe in this offense. But with the schedule and the defensive concerns, I worry about them. Coming into this year, Logan, lest we forget, team that was in the NFC title game, team that I said the fall off is coming hard, the Washington Commanders. They got railed by injuries, but also they fell off for a lot of football reasons. That defense was just flat out bad. So I'm not saying the Bears are going to fall off to that extent. I think the Bears have a better overall infrastructure, but they might get hit hard by some stuff. That's
terrifying.
The thing.
There's actually no easy games.
There's no easy games whatsoever, and the Bears felt that even this year. Again, 2-4 in the division. You mentioned Philly. I think nobody can be worse than Patullo.
I'm off Philly, and I think I might.
Cowboys?
Yes. I'm going Fogan mode. I think I'm going to pick Dallas.
You're out of your mind. What's hard about the NFC East is I look at the other teams, and I'm like, who am I going to take over them? Is Washington going to bounce back that much? Is Dallas's defense even going to be respectable? We don't know. Let's see what they do this offseason. Overall, though, I think you give some level of credit to the talent that Philly does have. I think, again, nobody can be worse than Patullo, in my opinion. Let's just see where they head from here. I would probably shout out Chicago.
I hate Philly and Pittsburgh's vibes.
I get it.
Vibes take.
I hate the vibes, too, and I think that most likely A.J. Brown is probably going to be gone. I just have a lot of respect for Howie Roseman. And even though the Eagles have had a couple down years, they have made the playoffs for 4 straight years, or 5 straight years, actually, because they made it as a wild card in 2021. They wouldn't be my first choice, but I see where you're coming from. The vibes are definitely heinously bad for them. Bran asks, is the Pro Bowl totally meaningless now that Shedeur Sanders and Keyshawn Nixon made it this season?
Carson and I talked about this briefly, but The Pro Bowl's been a joke. I don't know why the Pro Bowl still exists. I think it is the most meaningless game of. I don't know, man. Because people can even get critical of the basketball All-Star game. Most of the All-Star games are a joke. I don't watch baseball. I'm still pretty sure the All-Star game for some reason determines who hosts Game 7 of the World Series, which I think is pretty dumb. Why do we have a Pro Bowl? Carson threw this idea out. Why don't we just have a third All-Pro team?
Yeah.
I've said this time and time again. In the 2000s, when there was a tradition and all of the Pro Bowlers went to Hawaii, and it was an experience, and it's cool for the fans, it was cool for the players, there was something behind it, it was a vacation. That's when it mattered. That's when it was cool. Eventually, guys stopped playing hard. Guys stopped giving a fuck. I get it. You've played an entire season, and it's an extra strain on your body. I understand why guys don't want to play in the game anymore, so just eliminate it. What the fuck? Dude, I like Shedeur Sanders. I've been one of the biggest Shedeur advocates all year long.
You've been one of the biggest insane Shedeur advocates. You've been one of the biggest Shedeur advocates who's not completely insane, because there's some crazy power scaling there.
Why did Tyler Huntley make the Pro Bowl? Bruh.
Yeah. Because nobody wants to go. Because literally nobody wants to go. I think it's been completely meaningless for years. Shedeur, it's not even the cherry on top, bro. Tyler Huntley was the cherry on top. He's a backup quarterback. A backup quarterback made it. And now, this year, a guy who was arguably the worst starting quarterback in the NFL made it. I love you sliding in Keyshawn Nixon here with Shedeur, because Keyshawn, yeah, okay, he's just okay. I mean, he's not a deserving Pro Bowler, but Shedeur, I mean, he had more turnovers than touchdowns, right? He was dead last in EPA per dropback. He was really, really bad. And look, he's a 5th-round rookie. It's not that surprising. But yeah, I think it is completely uninteresting as an event. Nobody gives a fuck about the Pro Bowl. Nobody has for a long, long time. Ultimately, football is not a sport that's conducive to a Pro Bowl style event. Okay. It's a really dangerous sport. And so obviously they've completely taken the contact out of it. Now we're playing flag football now. Flag football with a bunch of umpteenth alternates.
Dude, you're not excited about the Drewski Bad Bunny flag football game?
That's going to be awesome. And if we get Mr. Beast in there and the Rizzler.
Drewski's going to save our Pro Bowl. But you don't care that it's Drewski's team, though.
Wait, can we get 45 minutes of Kevin Hart? Can Kevin Hart interrupt every single event with stand-up?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm in. I'm back in. I love the Pro Bowl again. It's totally cooked. And what annoys me is, okay, the game sucks, so we should just get rid of it. But we're also now treating this as an accolade. It goes down on your resume. Shedeur Sanders is a Pro Bowler for this year. That is completely meaningless to the point of being useless, to the point where, like you said, we should just add a third All-Pro team, because I'm all for honoring more guys. Same. And by the way, it's better to have media vote than fans to begin with, because they're better at it, and we can just do that, and we can abolish the Pro Bowl, because there's no reason for it to exist at this point.
And I have a way for you guys to squeeze a little bit of money out of an event that people watch. So let's eradicate the Pro Bowl. Let's add, or we can keep the Pro Bowl, and it's just a namesake thing, right? Because nobody wants to play in these games, but we still want to have an extra award. So we still have the team, the accolade, if it's the Pro Bowl, if it's the third All-Pro team, whatever. Let's bring back the quarterback challenge. Let's invite 5 guys who want to go through that event, because that's awesome. That was fun. The accuracy, the hitting the targets, the distance challenge, the agility challenge, whatever. And you could bring back some of the Pro Bowl games. I thought that was fun. Guys playing dodgeball, kickers doing tic-tac-toe, whatever. That you can have an event that people will watch that's fun, that's a poof piece, whatever. Nobody watches the game, and nobody wants to play in the game, so just eliminate that. And eliminate fake accolades, man. Because, some jackass who's sitting in somebody's balls right now in 20 years is going to go, Tyler Huntley was freaking sweet that year, man. He's a one-time Pro. Shedeur Sanders was a Pro Bowler. You're an idiot. And it's going to be like, bro, I was there. God, man, I can feel it, bro. I'm going to be the old fucking guy screaming at a cloud one day, and I don't like it, man. Let's blow up the Pro Bowl.
I agree with you that we could totally keep the accolade but get rid of the game, so it's just the players who are selected. We don't have to go to alternates. But at that point, I do think it makes more sense to just get rid of it and go with a third all-pro team. But I don't know, dude. Like, obviously the leagues are so revenue hungry that they're going to cling on to this. And it's a historical thing, but it's been completely ruined beyond repair, beyond reform. And who the fuck cares? Is this driving revenue for it? Like, it used to be a thing, at least, right? You'd go to Hawaii. Now it's like, let's just shove this before the Super Bowl, play 7-on-7 flag football with the 8th pick for the guy who we would have actually liked to have in this game. Like, it's just so stupid. It's just so stupid. So, yeah, it's totally meaningless. It's totally meaningless.
Dude, Drewski and Jay Balvin are going to draft their teams. It's going to be awesome.
I forgot that Drewski's
I don't think you're grasping
When are the
that
Drewski
concept.
Games?
Drewski's going to be there, so it's going to be
Drewski's going to be there. What position is he playing? Left tackle in 7-on-7?
Corporate greed is the root of all evil. It's the reason that Earth is going to be uninhabitable soon, and we're going to have an 18th. We're going to have an 18th football game. This is what really grinds my gears. I am pro guys not getting injured, and I think it is egregious that in a few years, this is inevitable.
Yeah,
because all of the owners are talking about it. We're going to get the 18th game. We're going to have a 20-week schedule. Guys, there is a potential, preseason, regular season, and playoffs included, some players are going to have played by the time we get to the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is going to be the 23rd game of football. They will have played in half a year.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, we are having it is not a coincidence that all of these Achilles, major ACL injuries are all happening across the board. In basketball and football alike, all of these athletes are becoming more and more explosive, and the strain on their bodies to play these games is becoming more and more difficult. And so, one, I will say it right now, I am adamantly against the NFL adding an 18th game. I was adamantly against them adding a 17th game. And if you go back and you look at the legislature that the NFLPA agreed upon, the only reason they added the 17th game was because they allowed NFL players to smoke weed. Smoking weed should have never been stigmatized, and it should have been shoehorned into a contract that forced them to play a 17th game. It's wrong. I think we are going to see more and more guys get injured every single season, and it's greedy and it's wrong of these owners. And also, you are stealing the dreams of more and more young men that would have had an opportunity in the preseason to prove themselves. I just think it's wrong, and I hate what this sport has become, and we're going to see it manifested in these injuries, man. I think the NFL should shorten their schedule back to 16 games. I think the NBA should shorten their schedule because more and more guys are getting injured. It's greedy, it's evil, and all of these decisions are being made by profits and not by people.
Yeah, and the NFLPA is not a good, well-run organization. They've made a lot of really bad decisions on the behalf of players. And Pablo Torre has done some excellent investigative work into sort of some of the machinations of the NFLPA as we've known it in recent years. But, yeah, what they need is another bye week, not another game. They should be finding more time for players'
100%.
bodies to recover. So, yeah, there you go. W anti-NFL administration spiel, Logan. Logan has been cooking as of late. Okay, we have a question about Aaron Rodgers. Muad'Dib says, Colin Cowherd said, if the Rams won the Super Bowl, Stafford would be above Rodgers all time. I was appalled. Where would you guys have Rodgers all time now that his career looks to be about over? And how many guys would you say had a better arm? Thoughts? I feel like we touched on this pretty extensively after the Steelers' last game, so I kind of just want to go to the last part. I will say I would have Rodgers as my number 3 quarterback of all time because I think his regular season resume is top 3 with Brady and Peyton. I mean, a 4-time MVP, 475 passing touchdowns to 105 picks in his time with the Packers, the most efficient regular season quarterback we've ever seen, arguably. And I think he is demonstrably better as a playoff performer than Peyton Manning, even though Peyton has one more Super Bowl, because as I've said many times in recent weeks, this keeps coming up. Peyton sucked in his playoff runs. Rodgers was great in a lot of playoff runs in which his defense totally failed him. He had one top 10 defense in his entire career in Green Bay. His Packers scored more points in the playoffs than any great quarterback's team in the playoffs other than Mahomes' Chiefs, Brady's teams, Kurt Warner's teams, and Josh Allen's Bills. I mean, they averaged over 27 points per game in Green Bay in the playoffs. So, yeah, I'm a Rodgers truther. I think he's absolutely top 5. People who would put Stafford up against him, it's just like the most ridiculous instance of ring culture ever, because Aaron Rodgers was better for their entire careers until he was 40 years old and tore his Achilles. So let's understand all that. But I like the arm question because I think that is a pretty interesting debate. Where would you have him there?
One, I think that I agree with you completely. I think the Stafford Rodgers talk is moronic. Rodgers has always been better. I completely agree with the positioning. I would have Mahomes and Brady above him and nobody else. Arm talent, that is where Stafford has an argument. Stafford's got one of the biggest arms in NFL history. I think with him, Dan Marino, John Elway, you got to remember, I mean, those guys were extremely highly touted. Mahomes, I think, is the greatest arm I've ever seen. I think he's number one. The guy literally is genetically engineered to have he's like double jointed in his shoulder. His dad pitched for a while in the major leagues. So he's up there for sure. Mahomes, Marino. What's interrelated with the arm question, though, and the reason I would have Rodgers 2 above the likes of Elway, and Marino's the closest. Marino, I think, would be 3 for me. The difference is it's not just arm ability. Like everybody always goes, oh, you know, Jeff George, Jamarcus Russell, they could throw a ball 70, 80 yards from their knees. There's a difference between arm strength and being accurate as well off movement and downfield in a way that I think is also important when we're discussing arm talent. That's why I would have Rodgers 2. Because when you put everything in tandem, the ability to make throws on the run, under pressure at different arm angles, downfield, you know, to be accurate along with the arm strength, that's why I'd have Rodgers 2. I'm gonna pick my brain and see if there's anybody I'm forgetting about. But those are the guys off the top of my head.
I think if you're looking purely at arm strength, and I mean this in a functional sense of like, yes, pure arm strength, but also your ability to do it on the move, off platform, all that stuff, I would say the 3 guys above Rodgers to me would be Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Caleb Williams, frankly, in terms of pure strength.
I guess.
Like, I just think, I don't know, man. Josh Allen has more of a cannon than Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, but like I would put Rodgers above him, everything considered.
Well, I agree, and that's what I was getting to. I mean, if you're talking about holistic arm talent, that combination of strength and accuracy, pinpoint precision, can you do it on the move? Can you do it off platform? Can you do it from different arm angles? Then I would only have Mahomes above Rodgers. And I think, I mean, they're almost in a tier of their own when it comes to all those things together. Because Elway, he's got the cannon. He's less accurate than all these dudes we're talking about, except for Caleb.
If we're talking talent, too, Lamar would be on
Lamar's got a cannon.
An extended list of, if we're talking about functional, he's ridiculous. Like the off movement.
Yeah.
Like in Lamar has such a Lamar reminds me of Vic, not in the sense of like, and Lamar's way better. Lamar's way better than Michael Vick ever was. But what I mean by this is like the ability to just flick your wrist. There's only a few guys like Lamar had such a cannon of an arm. You have seen him have to reel in, I think, sometimes from when he was a younger quarterback to harness that strength into more accuracy. But Lamar and Vic are special in the sense that, like, rarely have I seen guys that can just, like, literally flick their wrist and the ball jumps, like, 60, 70 yards at full speed is what I mean. Like, them being able to be that kind of – to generate that kind of power at full speed is almost unparalleled. But Lamar would be in the top 10 of those arguments as well to me. He's a beast.
I agree. Lamar would be top 10. I don't think he's in the top tier. But, I think if you were taking 2 guys where it's like – can you make the greatest throw in league history, right? High degree of difficulty with perfect accuracy. It's Mahomes and it's Rodgers over everybody else. Also, this just occurred to me as you mentioned Mahomes' dad playing in the MLB again. I don't think the MLB All-Star Game still determines home field in the World Series. I think they got rid of that, which, thank God, that was dumb. It's way too much stakes to put on an All-Star Game. VA Ports asks, between Glenn, Taylor, Bowles, and Quinn, who's on the hottest seat, Logan?
Good question. Got to be Zach Taylor, right?
I think Zach Taylor's seat already should have burned up and he should have been ejected to the moon. I
would say Taylor. then Aaron Glenn, just because, holy shit, man. Like, I'm all for giving guys grace, and like I thought Gerard Mayo maybe should have gotten another year. I would have been wrong on that take.
Yeah,
but like,
thank God he didn't.
I'm normally like for like giving guys an extra season, but when it was this catastrophically bad, like Robert Saleh really seemed like he was holding that team together.
Yeah. You're a defensive guy, and you've got a bottom 5 defense. When you do still have talent on that defense, that's very bad for sure.
Like Dan Quinn just came in, turned the team around in 1 year. Like, I got to think he's got a little bit longer of a leash. Todd Bowles has had a ton of success since he took over as head coach of that team. Like, you got to think there's some built-in faith there. For me, it would be Taylor and then Aaron Glenn. But I agree with you completely. Zach Taylor should have been gone. That guy's just not a good head coach.
He's really not. I think all these guys are on the hot seat to different degrees, but the fact that the Bengals have been willing to tolerate this level of underachievement and mediocrity, and I do think a lot of it is a roster stuff, and most of it is just the defense being horrible, but Zach Taylor obviously has not been able to find the guy to figure out the defense, even though Lou Anarumo leaves, has a good season with the Colts. Like, I just don't think Taylor's even good as an offensive guy. I don't think he's good as a game manager, and like at some point, when does he just get the fuck you fire? Like, clearly you're not the guy, you know? We can assess, okay, what percentage are you at fault here? The Bengals haven't made the playoffs in the last 3 years, and I think they should just clean house. I think they need a hard reset. Obviously, I'm not talking about personnel. They've committed to Burrow and Jamar and Trey Hendrickson, but
I don't know how hard it is.
Decision makers suck.
I don't know how hard it is for NFL teams to. Obviously, it's way harder than NBA teams, but like, I don't know why NFL teams don't make more like big swings to like drastically change their roster construction. Like the Bengals are a good example where like I know it's hard to swallow that rebuild kind of pill, but like clearly you have way too much money tied up in your offense that hinders the rest of your roster. And like to the Steelers, I get it's hard to make that decision. You have so much money tied up in your defense that it's clearly hindering the ability to build out a good offense. Football is a complete team sport. You have to be balanced on both sides of the ball. Like, I don't know, man. I've always wondered about that. Why more teams don't like make those hard decisions where like clearly you're so far away, and I think these teams are too imbalanced to actually be competitive.
I think they say that guy's a star. We want to pay that star. Especially Burrow did ask them to pay both receivers. And, of course, Burrow wants them. But it's your job as an organization to be like, hey, Joe, if we have 2 of the highest paid receivers in the NFL, our defense is going to be terrible. Now, it's also true that they've made terrible personnel decisions with the defense, and they've drafted very poorly, and everybody other than Trey Hendrickson sucks. And even when Trey Hendrickson was on the field, they were a terrible defense, and they're a historically awful defense without him. And they haven't even committed long-term to Trey Hendrickson still. So I don't know what to say. I think the Bengals are cooked as cook can be, but I agree with you. I mean, at some point, I think they have to trade T. Higgins because they just can't salvage this roster with so much tied up in 3 offensive players. But also, again, they should just not be this bad at drafting defense because you can build a budget defense. We've seen it done. They just don't have the front office people to do that because they're really a pretty incompetent organization. Okay, Kellums has another coaching question. Are the Titans assembling a good enough coaching staff to complement Cam Ward? I love the Saleh hire, but we needed the OC hire to land, and I don't know about Dable.
I actually really like what the Titans are doing. They got the culture guy in Saleh who, say what you want about the guy, players were bought into him, they were committed, and he squeezed all the juice he could get out of those Jets defenses. So I like Saleh. I'm glad he's getting a second opportunity. And say what you want about Dable as a head coach. Personally, I don't think Dable ever had the temperament to be a head coach. I don't think grown men like getting put down and screamed at. Like, I just don't think Dable had the emotional regulation that you need as a head coach. I look at Dable the way I looked at Josh McDaniels when he took over as a head coach. Look, you can be the most brilliant person of all time. If you don't have people skills, you can't be a head coach in the NFL. Like, there is just a communication threshold that you have to reach to get through to your guys and to motivate them. And I think like Josh McDaniels, I think Dable had very, very similar shortcomings when it came to communicating with his staff and his players. And so offensive coordinator, I think that suits him a lot more, where he doesn't have to be the lead guy. And I liked him when he was in Buffalo. Again, it's a different situation because you don't have a Josh Allen, but
Right.
I like Dable as an offensive schemer, and I think I like both of their hires. They're not like A+, but I would give the Titans I'd give them like a B+. It's a very solid and productive, and they're progressing. I like what Tennessee's done this offseason.
I like it too, and I don't mind them at all going with like established candidates on both sides. Like Saleh, maybe you can say, oh, is there a ceiling if he's our guy because he's so defense-pilled, and even though he's a great defensive coach, he's not bringing the level of innovation of like a Jesse Minter or Brian Flores or whatever. But right now, I just think the Titans need stability there. They need somebody who can overhaul the culture, who can get the most out of the personnel they do have. And then I do like Dable as an OC. I think he's solid in that role. I think there were things you could nitpick with him towards the end of his Bills tenure at times, just abandoning the run. But they didn't have the best personnel in terms of the run game. And I thought he was a creative play caller in the passing game. And also, I think specifically, if you look at where Cam Ward is at right now, again, Josh Allen, outlier development story, one of a kind. He deserves the most credit for that. But Dable was there for the key years of Josh's development, and you can't overlook that. And when it comes to some of those mechanical tweaks and the refinement of the super talented mega athlete, which Cam has a lot of similarities to Josh in that way, I think Dable has proven an ability to do that, and people can look and say, oh, but Danny Dimes didn't succeed with him. Well, Danny Dimes did have one good season with him, but yeah, I think he got dropped into a much better offensive situation in Indianapolis, and I also think Shane Steichen is an elite coach where Dable is probably just a pretty good OC, but willingness to use RPOs at a high rate, I think that's a good fit for Cam. I think overall, this makes sense. Like you're saying, it's not going to blow you out of the water, but I think it's pretty good overall. We have a question from the great Cammy, who says, since the AFC Championship game, I have seen more dome dialogue. Where do the nerds stand on domes versus playing in the elements? Logan, you've always been pretty deep into dome dialogue, wouldn't you say?
Huge. It's one of my great pastimes.
Right.
I'm anti-dome.
No! Clip
Yeah,
that.
shocking.
Chat, clip that. Oh my God. No context. No context. Nerd Sesh goes viral.
I like the elements. It reminds me of old football. Old football teams were built on defense and running the football. You remember that one meme? Oh, what's the matter, air raid boy? Afraid of establishing the run? Yeah. In the playoffs, playoff football is a different sport, especially out in the elements. And I think teams that have those kind of advantages in their stadiums, they should lean into it. I think it's a real weapon. I can't remember who was. Oh, it was Kurt Warner. Shout out Kurt Warner. I love him, but he was bitching about it. I'm a dome guy. How am I supposed to get ready to go play in the conditions? That's football. Like, I like the random element, and some people argue that because of the weather conditions, that you aren't always going to get the best team in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. That's why I like football. The one-game random element of it all. You need to have the best formula completely, not dependent at all on the conditions. Oh, you can throw your best punch in a dome? Okay. Can you throw your best punch in a torrential downpour? Yeah. Can you throw a solid punch when the snow is pouring down in enemy territory with 20-mile-per-hour winds coming off of the opposing team's lake? All that matters to me in football, and I think it improves the aura and the stakes, and I like that. Those are all elements that are in advantages of football, and I like it. So that's why I don't like teams like Buffalo talking about going to play on a dome. I think the fact
they're not.
That
they built a new stadium, it's not a dome.
I've just seen it so much. Cleveland's moving to a dome. I think that's a mistake. I think that's one of the big advantages that a team like Cleveland would have if Chicago were to go to a dome. I think that would be a mistake. Like, if you were one of these cold weather teams, it's an advantage. Why did the Chargers hit their head in the playoffs every single year under Dan Fouts? Because they had to go to Cincinnati, because they had to go play in some cold-ass weather games, and they're used to playing in the warm. Why did Miami falter so much in the playoffs? They're a hot team. When they have to go and play in the conditions, they're not accustomed to it. Like, I just think it is a real advantage that cold weather teams have over teams that play in domes or have it. And, You should use the elements to your advantage. I'll give a shout out, and this team plays in a dome now. They've played in a dome for a while. Bud Grant specifically told his teams in the playoffs in the 70s, we're not going to have jackets. We're not going to have sleeves. We're not going to have heaters. We are going to have a psychological advantage by the time it comes in the playoffs, and we are going to force teams to have to come here and play in the cold weather. And he got them to 4 Super Bowls. I like it. I'm anti-dome. I'm pro-weather conditions. I'm pro-random. I think all of it adds to the sport that is football.
I agree, dude. I mean, I've seen some ridiculous shit of people being like, we need neutral site conference championship games. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Why do we play for home field advantage? What is the point of seeding? Like, you're stripping away what should be an advantage. Because like you're saying, okay, it sucks for everybody, I guess, but it definitely should be more comfortable for the teams that are used to playing, practicing, etc. in that environment. And also, like you said, I just think it's an outdoor sport. The elements are part of it. The elements add interesting dynamics to the game. And I like what the Bills are doing because I think they're like kind of at a middle ground where they've got a roof in the new stadium, but it's open air. So fans are pretty much covered. There's a little protection from the elements. They've got all like the newest and best field heating technology, but again, it's open air. You're still mostly exposed to the elements. If it snows, like you're going to have to play through that. I just think that's a nice middle ground. If you say, okay, we don't want to get hit with the absolute worst of the worst, I can understand that. But if you're like, we don't want to ever play in the snow, we don't want to ever play in the rain, it's football, man. It's an outdoor sport. That's part of it. We play into the winter for a reason. If you wanted to avoid the elements, I mean, this could be a fucking spring sport. This could be a summer sport. It's not. We play the most important games outside of the Super Bowl, often in tough conditions. And I don't like stripping away the uniqueness of stadiums and trying to standardize everything. Like across the board, I think this is a trend that we've seen in all of sports. If we want to get up on our soapbox one more time, of trying to maximize commercial viability, trying to maximize luxury box seating, looking at things from the perspective of, oh, we're in Kansas City. We want to be able to host a Super Bowl. We'll never host a Super Bowl in our current stadium, their old stadium, the old Arrowhead, because it's fucking freezing in Kansas City in January and it's going to snow. I think that is a misguided way to look at things because first and foremost, I mean, what makes these atmospheres great is having the fanatics there. It is maximizing the true fan experience. And I think other things are being prioritized. I also think a lot of these cities, you know, Kansas City's not going to host the Super Bowl more than once every 50 years anyways, because even if they preserve the literal field, the literal playing conditions, like media, players, the Super Bowl is meant to be a fun event. That's why it's in Vegas all the time. That's why it's in Phoenix all the time. That's why it's in California all the time, because it's not just about the conditions on the field. If that's all that mattered, okay, they'd go to Detroit more often than they do. Like, it's also, is this an enjoyable atmosphere for people to be in at this time of year? The thousands upon thousands of people who are traveling here for this event. That's not going to be the case in a Kansas City. That's not going to be the case in a Cleveland if they build a dome. So I just think overall, it's misguided. And like you said, obviously there's already, I think like 10 teams that have domes, but I find it's much rarer than some people want you to think that a game is significantly impeded by weather. That's why they stick out so much in your mind. That's why I can so vividly remember the Steelers-Bills snow game when Le'Veon went for like 250 yards on the ground and was like trudging through it, right? That's why we are going to remember forever this quarter and a half of the Broncos Patriots game that was played in brutal conditions. Like, it's incredibly memorable because it doesn't actually happen that often. And there are measures that can be put in place to limit the impact of weather without entirely eliminating it like you do when you build a dome. And I just think for the most part, it's fun and cool and unique and part of what makes football great to have to persevere and overcome. I mean, this is a rugged ass sport, man. This is a tough guy sport. So I like it. I'm pro natural playing in the elements.
Me too. Well said.
All right. We agree on that. We got a couple more questions. BB Ben Burrow says, how high up are y'all ranking Pickens after this year?
Top 10. I mean, that's where I've been with Pickens.
Yeah.
Everybody knows how big of a Pickens guy I was, but I told everybody. Nobody listened to me, but I told everybody Pickens is going to be the best receiver in the league once you give him a competent quarterback, and then they did, and now everybody's like, oh, Pickens is a shit. I know. I watched him his whole career. He's freaking sweet.
He is sweet. Okay. I'll get more specific. Tier 1, in whatever order you like, Puka, Jettis, JSN, Jamar, right? I think those 4 are like clearly above the rest of the league at receiver at this point. Tier 2 to me is Pickens, Amon-Ra, CD, AJ Brown.
CD. Yeah, exactly.
I think he's better than CD. He's
I
better
would
than CD
put-
this year in the same offense.
I think I'd put him on Raw tier 1.
Really? You think
He's
you could argue him over a Jamar, a Jettis,
Actually,
a JSN, or a Puka? I don't. I think he's great.
The closest two are Amon-Ra and Pickens. I think Amon-Ra has such great hands and is such a good route runner, like all over. And then Pickens is just one of the most freakishly talented receivers
Yes.
I've ever seen. That guy is an actual alien.
He is, dude. I mean, just like some of the simplest routes, like he was the most effective dude on slants this year. His vertical ability, like just send him on a go. I mean, he's just such an athlete. He creates separation, but he's also an insane contested catch guy. He's ridiculous after the catch. I mean, just a phenomenal, phenomenal season from him. So you look at the production, I mean, 29 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3rd most yards per target of all players with a minimum of 50 catches. That's only behind JSN and Jameson Williams, actually. 4th is Puka. So, like, he's in elite efficiency company. I think it's pretty easy to argue he is that 5th guy. Regardless, I think he's in that top 8. I wish that Malik Neighbors could have been in this conversation because he was so nasty before he got hurt. I just think he has to prove more. But, yeah, I think you can definitely argue that Pickens is top 5. Last question, Logan. Bamsketball asks, why did God make me a Jets fan? Does he hate me? Yes.
Yeah.
God hates you.
You could switch up, but it would not be moral.
Yeah.
Would
it
be
not
justified,
moral.
though.
What do you think about Joel switching up? Our good friend Joel
It's
from
fake.
Pick Side.
It's fake. I'm Team Dales.
He's a WWE character, that Joel Moran, and I fucking love him. That guy. He knows
he's a
how to
genius.
antagonize.
He's a genius.
He's one of the greatest minds of our time and probably one of the greatest minds of all time. But he had the
He's a devout
self-respect to
Packers
say,
fan. He's a
fuck the
devout
Jets.
Packers
He's a
fan.
Packers fan. He's been a Packers fan. Bamsketball, you can do the same. Things aren't getting better for the Jets. You know, God hates you. Woody Johnson hates you.
I would not blame you.
No, I wouldn't either. I would not either. All right, guys. Appreciate you all tuning in. Appreciate all of you sending us your questions. We hope you enjoyed. As always, you know where to find us. All of our full episodes on our YouTube channel, along with video essays and video breakdowns we do. I would love to make one of those this week. Unfortunately, my computer broke, so I can't edit a video this week. Sucks to be me, I guess. But we'll definitely lock in on that down the stretch of the NBA season. And you can listen to all of our shows across all audio platforms. And you can follow us across social, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, and of course, all of our daily short form trivia content and our takes that we get out there as well. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.